Chapter 269. Is that Tai Chi? Wuzhang Shifeng, who was having a secret conversation with Zhu Wudao in the study room, looked up at the sky and suddenly saw a Tai Chi image formed by two white and black clouds in the distant sky. Yes, it's really a Tai Chi. Zhu Wudao also looked at it curiously and sighed. This world is really unpredictable. I didn't expect that there are clouds that can evolve into the appearance of Tai Chi naturally. We have to be in awe. Sure enough, Zhu Wudao was the most suitable candidate for the chairman of the Sword Council. As soon as he opened his mouth, there was a strong smell of chicken soup. Humph, Senior Baiju, don't you think there's something wrong with this cloud? Wuzhang Shifeng looked at this Tai Chi cloud very cautiously. It seemed that there were many shocking secrets hidden in it. Color. A bright light flashed in Zhu Wudao's cloudy eyes. Now that you mention it, there is indeed something wrong with that half of the black cloud. Its color is too black. This shouldn't be a situation where the sun can't pass through because the cloud is too thick. Could it be that the true color of this cloud is black? This is not a cloud. This is someone fighting. Looking at this, it is at least a battle between spirit sword-level sword-bearers. Wuzhang Shifeng said. When he first saw this Tai Chi cloud, he felt that it was not a normal cloud. It was a scene of people fighting. Look, you are in the direction of the Miling mountain range. If there is a spirit sword-level sword-bearer fighting, then they would report to me immediately. However, I haven't received any information yet. Perhaps some spirit sword-level sword-bearers are too bored to practice their swordsmanship. Zhu Wudao said casually. With his control of Yuzhang City, it was impossible for a spirit sword-level battle to be hidden from him. Miling Mountain Range? Wuzhang Shifeng pondered for a moment. Senior Baiju, we have finished what we wanted to talk about. The matter has also been agreed upon, so it's time for me to complete my original task. Has the sword-bearer left by Tian Songyun in the Luoting mineral vein woken up? My prince seed is still with him. Well. Upon hearing Wuzhang Shifeng ask about Gohan, and that the prince seed was involved, Zhu Wudao's expression changed drastically. Sword Immortal Shifeng, what did you say? The prince seed is with the sword-bearer? That's right. Although he said that the prince seed was with his friend, I reckon that the prince seed should still be with him. He's a cunning child, but it's a pity that he's too young. Otherwise, he would be a good material. Alright, I'll have to trouble Senior Baiju to bring him here. After I've obtained the prince seed, I'll have to return to Yanjing City. Lord Haotian is still waiting for me to report back. Why didn't you tell me earlier that the prince seed was in him? Zhu Wudao was so angry that his beard curled up. The people in the Luoting mineral vein reported to me that the kid disappeared together with the medical cabin. Missing? Could it be that this kid has been blinded by benefits and still thinks that he can keep that grand prince seed? Wuzhang Shifeng snorted coldly. He thought that Gohan couldn't bear to part with the prince seed and had escaped after waking up. No, 10 minutes after we left there, I got the news that the medical cabin was missing. With that kid's injury, it's impossible for him to climb out by himself without an hour or two of treatment. He should have been carried away by someone else. Zhu Wudao's expression was very ugly. It seems that in addition to you, Wuzhang Shifeng, there's a second group of forces that has taken a fancy to this prince seed. That stinky kid is likely to have been taken away by them. Long Shi Jiandi. There was a trace of haze in Wuzhang Shifeng's eyes. If Long Shi Jiandi was also involved, then this task would not be so easy to complete. At least, it would be impossible for him to set off for Yanjing City tonight. Zhu Wudao was really an old fox. In the blink of an eye, he came up with the most likely answer. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong this time and also led Wuzhang Shifeng into a ditch. The person who took Gohan away did not take a fancy to Gohan's prince seed, but to Gohan's Qinpin sword. What a powerful force! The moment the Tai Chi Yin-Yang cloud appeared in the sky, Rina Takasaka instantly jumped up from Gohan's body. Holding the sword in her hand, she stared at the direction of the Tai Chi yin-yang cloud with rapt attention, as if an extremely terrifying opponent was hiding there. Rina Takasaka did not speak. She closed her eyes and began to listen to the wind around her. She heard the sound of feet stepping on weeds and branches mixed with the wind, which meant that someone was walking around. However, the thing that Rina Takasaka was most afraid of happened. Even with her control over the wind, she was unable to determine where the sound was coming from. It was as if there were countless people walking toward her from all directions, from the 9 heavens to the 10 earths. Unable to get an answer from the wind, Rina Takasaka could only open her eyes and use them to look for traces of the approaching person. But the tall grass that was originally intended for concealment became an obstacle to Rina Takasaka's vision, making it impossible for her to see the situation around her. Fall! A strong gust of wind blew around Takasaka Rina, forming a fierce gust of wind in a small area. The reason why it was called a gust of wind was because the wind was as sharp as a knife. Even if it was a tree trunk as thick as 2 adults hugging it, it would still be cut down by the gust of wind in an instant, not to mention weeds and shrubs. When the gust of wind ended, everything within a 1-kilometer radius was cut down at the roots. Her field of vision instantly widened, and there was nothing blocking her view. With the help of the gust of wind, Rina Takasaka finally got a clear look at the opponent that made her lose control over the wind. It was a beautiful girl with a cold face. Her figure was exquisite, and her breasts were plump but not exaggerated. It was the perfect size for a girl. Her waist was extremely slender, and her 2 beautiful legs were slender and charming. A pair of bare feet as white as milk was standing on the fragrant green grass. The clothes that the girl wore were rather thin or rather tattered. Her top only covered a little below her breasts, and the sleeves only covered a little above her arms. Below her breasts, large patches of skin and skin glistened under the gaze of the naked eye. The pants that covered her legs were also very short, only a little below the triangular area, not much longer than a pair of hot pants. Moreover, this pair of trousers seemed to be very narrow. It was tightly stretched on the thighs, and the edge of the trousers wrapped around the plump thighs into a perfect circle of flesh. All in all, the clothes that the girl was wearing were all childlike in style and length. It was as if she was wearing clothes from her childhood. It was so incongruous and so sexy. Her skin seemed to be carved out of jade, and one could faintly see a kind of radiance shining on her skin. She was like a perfect girl who had walked out of one of the 3 great Asian arts: plastic surgery, makeup, and Photoshop. Just by standing there, she seemed to represent the pinnacle of a girl's beauty. Seeing her, even Rina Takasaka, who had never cared about her appearance, could not help but feel a sense of inferiority. Even if she took off her disguise and revealed her true self, she still felt that her beauty was not even 1/10 of that girl's. However, the girl's appearance was very familiar. The more Rina Takasaka looked at her, the more she felt that she resembled a certain girl. Especially the short children's clothes that she was wearing, Rina Takasaka couldn't be more familiar. "You're Ching Pin?" Rina Takasaka asked in disbelief. That's right, the girl's appearance was like a child's version of Ching Pin. And the clothes that she was wearing were the same ones that Ching Pin was wearing, so there was no mistaking it. "You've made my body angry, woman." Ching Pin slowly walked up to Rina Takasaka and spoke with a sweet voice. It was completely different from Ching Pin's childish voice. From her voice alone, this girl did not resemble Ching Pin at all. "Then, please go to hell." She clearly had the appearance of a young girl, but when she spoke, there was a monstrous murderous aura akin to that of a giant beast. As soon as Ching Pin finished speaking, the flowers and trees that Rina Takasaka had cut earlier floated into the air and shot toward Rina Takasaka like arrows. "It's powerful, but these ordinary things can't hurt me." Rina Takasaka didn't care about the attacks from the flowers and trees at all. Only Yuan Ko's or the Sword Maiden's swords could hurt her. Apart from them, these flowers and trees couldn't possibly hurt her, before Reina Takasaka could finish her thoughts, the tree that was closest to her had already struck her face, leaving a blood-red mark on her originally translucent face. "This is impossible. How can this hurt me?" Reina Takasaka exclaimed in shock. In the next moment, even more branches and flowers fell on Reina Takasaka. Caught off guard, Reina Takasaka was buried deep in those things. They piled up a few meters high, looking like a grave made of trees. At the same time, when Reina Takasaka was buried, Gu Han's body that was lying on the side instantly disappeared. In the next moment, he reappeared at the girl's feet, saving Gu Han from the most dangerous situation possible. Wind. A few seconds later, a strong gust of wind erupted from the inside of the tree graveyard, blasting all the trees apart and sending them flying in all directions. When the smoke dissipated, Reina Takasaka stared at the girl in front of her. Only now did she realize that Reina Takasaka had transformed from a little brat that she had been playing with to an opponent that could rival her. "No wonder he wanted me to take you away, even at the cost of cutting off his hair. So you're so powerful, Chinpin." Reina Takasaka finally understood why the Fleeting Time family was so desperate to get their hands on the sword of Chinpin. "I don't know what you're talking about, but you can die now." Chinpin looked at Reina Takasaka as if she was looking at a dead person. She waved her hand and 20 leaves flew up from the ground. The leaves gathered in the air and combined into the shape of a lotus. Lotus floats, scattering the 9 hells. Even Chinpin was starting to like the names of those Chunibu moves. Chapter 270. Reina Takasaka looked at the white lotus dancing in the air with an intoxicated expression on her face. It was clearly a lotus formed from green leaves, but it was as white as jade, pure and flawless. The white lotus was so pure that when Reina Takasaka looked at it, she could not help but have the urge to kneel down. It was as if the white lotus was the supreme deity of the world. "What the hell?" Reina Takasaka trembled as she snapped out of her reverie. Her eyes were filled with fear as she looked at the white lotus. The lotus was simply too terrifying. Break. Reina Takasaka's clothes began to flutter violently as a dozen wind blades shot out from her body, attacking the white lotus in the air. In Reina Takasaka's eyes, it was just a few leaves that had been forcefully put together. Under her wind blades, it would immediately be sliced into pieces. "You're overestimating yourself," Chinpin snorted coldly. She treated Reina Takasaka's attack as if it were a toy or a remote control car. The topmost leaf on the white lotus flower that was formed by 20 leaves slowly floated down. Reina Takasaka's wind blades had yet to reach her, but the aura of the wind blades seemed to have scared the leaf off. Intercept. The young girl's delicate red lips spat out slightly, and the falling leaf suddenly burst into flames. Then, it quickly burned into ashes, and was blown away by the wind blades that came flying in all directions. The moment the wind blades came into contact with the ashes, all of them disappeared without a trace. It was as if the wind blades had never existed in the previous 0.01 seconds, disappearing without a trace. How could this be? Reina Takasaka's expression grew more and more serious. The wind blades she had casually released were equivalent to a full-powered attack from the ghost-level Yuan Ko. Even a famed sword-level wielder would have to focus on defending against such an attack. How could it disappear just because of some ashes? "It's a waste of the first petal." Chinpin shook her head. She felt that using a single leaf to deal with the wind blades was like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. "Rise, tornado." Reina Takasaka decided that she couldn't treat Chinpin casually anymore. This was an opponent that wasn't inferior to her, and she had to give it her all. With Reina Takasaka at the center, a tornado appeared out of thin air. In an instant, sand and pebbles were blown away, and everything in the surroundings was sucked into the tornado. However, this was only the beginning. The second, third, fourth, and fifth tornadoes rose from the ground and surrounded Reina Takasaka. This was Reina Takasaka's ultimate move. Each of the 24 tornadoes was no weaker than the dragon-level Yuan Ko. The 20 tornadoes were like 24 dragon-level Yuan Ko wielders, 24 grand swordsmen. It could be seen that Reina Takasaka had put in a lot of effort to deal with the 24 tornadoes. Her forehead was covered in sweat. Summoning these tornadoes required a lot of energy, and maintaining the 24 tornadoes at the same time took up a lot of Reina Takasaka's energy. The amount of energy she had expended determined that she had to attack quickly. Otherwise, she would tire herself out if this went on. Dazzling tornado formation. At Reina Takasaka's command, the small tornadoes were like chess pieces. They immediately spun toward their designated positions, sucking in all the rocks and trees along the way. By the time the 24 tornadoes reached their respective positions, they had grown from small tornadoes the size of trees to medium-sized tornadoes the size of buildings. At the same time, the 24 tornadoes surrounded Chinpin from all directions. It felt like 24 ferocious chariots and artillery soldiers had surrounded the lone general of the enemy in the middle of the camp. This was a dead end in the game of chess. The situation seemed to have turned dangerous in an instant. I can feel the presence of a powerful wind element. On the way to the Mei Ling mountain range, a slender immortal sword flew rapidly in the air. A man with fluttering clothes stood on the immortal sword. This man was Sword Immortal Wuzhang Shifang, who had just returned to Yuzhang City from the Mei Ling mountain range. The immortal sword he was standing on was the heavenly sword of the sword mistress. There were many ways for an immortal sword wielder to travel. They could take a hovercraft, or they could take a battleship. They could walk on their own, or they could fly in the sky. However, the most convenient and common way to travel was to stand on their sword mistress and let it fly at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound. It felt like flying swords in ancient xianxia novels. Sword immortals could fly on their swords and travel thousands of miles in an instant. Of course, the actual flying speed could not be that exaggerated, but it was not a problem to surpass the speed of sound. It took them less than 10 minutes to reach the Mei Ling mountain range. It was several times faster than flying back to the Mei Ling mountain range. This was the fastest flying speed that Wuzhang Shifang could currently use. When Wuzhang Shifang was sprinting toward the Mei Ling mountain range, the heavenly sword of the sword mistress suddenly told Wuzhang through the sword mark that she felt the presence of a powerful wind element. The presence of the wind element? Wuzhang Shifang was stunned when he heard this. The wind element was the embodiment of the Western magic system's understanding of the world. They believed that everything in the universe could be divided into 12 elemental systems, and the wind element was one of these 12 elemental systems. In other words, the Yuan Ko that Tian Cumulus Cloud felt should be a Western magic Yuan Ko. There's no way I'm wrong. I once fought a wind elemental elf king in my past life. It was a tough battle. I can still remember it clearly. It's the power of the wind elemental, Tian Songyun said solemnly. Can you determine the level of that Yuan Ko? Wuzhang Shifang asked. It's too far away, so it's a little blurry, but I'm sure that it's at least a nether-tier Yuan Ko. The heavenly sword of the sword mistress was very decisive. Wuzhang Shifang nodded to himself. According to his estimation, it should be a nether-tier Yuan Ko. Sigh, I hope this Yuan Ko isn't coming for that unlucky sword wielder. Wuzhang Shifang smiled bitterly. He should have brought Gohan with him when he left. After all, he had not gotten the information about the Prince tier from Gohan yet. If he had brought Gohan with him, everything would have been fine. However, there were two reasons why Wuzhang Shifang decided to let Gohan stay there. First, Wu Wudao was also there. At that time, Wuzhang Shifang and Wu Wudao did not have a secret conversation in the study. Their relationship was superficial. If Wuzhang Shifang showed that he cared too much about Gohan, it would inevitably arouse the old fox's suspicion. Wu Wudao's need for the prince tier was no less than Haotian Jiandi's. The second reason was a little hard to say. It was because Tian Songyun cared too much about the solid Han. He was angry, sad, and tried his best to save her. This made Wuzhang Shifang not hide anything from Gohan. A feeling of jealousy filled Wuzhang Shifang's heart. Don't think that sword immortals were immortals. They were just humans with great power. The emotions and desires in their hearts were even more than those of ordinary people. Bringing Gohan with him and watching Tian Junyun take care of him, would they forget their original master? Wuzhang Shifang was not so open-minded. Therefore, Wuzhang Shifang decided to leave Gohan there first. Anyway, the swordsman from Yuzhang City would arrive soon. After he finished his discussion with Wu Wudao, he could look for Gohan to get the prince tier. Would he dare to defy the will of an immortal sword-bearer? However, when he left Gohan, something happened. When the swordsman from Yuzhang City arrived, Gohan's medical pod had disappeared without a trace. It would have been fine if he had known about it immediately. However, Wu Wudao, the old fox, had kept it a secret because he did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. By the time Wuzhang Shifang got the news and returned to Meiling mountain range, it was already 2 hours later. Who knew if Gohan was dead or alive? According to Wuzhang Shifang's judgment, there were only 2 forces interested in taking Gohan away. One was the swordsman from Long Shi Jiandi's side. The Prince tier was irresistible to any Jiandi. It was not surprising that Long Shi Jiandi's people appeared here. The second was that Yuan Ko happened to appear there and took away Gohan's medical pod. Wuzhang Shifang could only hope that it was Long Shi Jiandi's people who took away Gohan, not Yuan Ko. If it was Long Shi Jiandi, Gohan would certainly not die, and the whereabouts of the prince tier would be expected to be found. But if it was Yuan Ko who took away Gohan, then Wuzhang Shifang could only hope to find Gohan's dimensional pocket to see if the prince tier was hidden in it. As for Gohan's life, he did not hold any hope. However, from the aura of the underworld level wind elemental Yuan Qi that had suddenly appeared, Gohan was most likely done for. Thinking of this, Wuzhang Shifang suddenly felt a headache. Returning to the battlefield, when the 24 tornadoes were in place, the siege against the young girl Qinpin officially began. On the left and right sides of the young girl Qinpin, the 4 tornadoes wrapped in a huge amount of sand and stones rushed over. If she was directly hit by such a tornado, the young girl Qinpin would be turned into meat paste on the spot by the flying sand and stones. Intercept. With another intercept word, 2 petals of the white lotus in the air fell, and like the previous one, after burning to ashes, the tornado that was about to sweep the young girl Qinpin instantly subsided and disappeared. What was more frightening was that the sand and stones wrapped in the tornado also disappeared along with the tornado. If the disappearance of the invisible airflow like the wind was understandable, then the disappearance of the solid things like sand and stones was something that Takasaka Rina could not understand. Suddenly, Takasaka Rina began to feel afraid. Chapter 271. Are you afraid? Qinpin asked calmly when she saw the change in Rina Takasaka's expression. Rina Takasaka was indeed afraid. Due to the disappearance of the previous wind blade, she was already prepared for it. She focused all her attention on controlling the 24 tornadoes, especially the one that attacked Qinpin earlier. Rina Takasaka focused more than 60% of her attention on it. She was afraid that Qinpin would use some strange method to make her tornadoes disappear, just like the wind blade earlier. However, the thing that he was worried about happened again. The 4 tornadoes disappeared without any warning. Even the mental power that Reina Takasaka had attached to the tornado to control the wind element in the tornado had disappeared. It felt as if her arm had been crushed on a molecular level. It was one thing for her arm to be crushed, but what was more frightening was that Rina Takasaka had no idea how or what destroyed her arm. That was the scariest thing. Forget it. Let's attack together. Rina Takasaka's face was ashen. Under her command, the remaining 20 tornadoes swept toward Qinpin at the same time. 20 tornadoes attacking at the same time. Putting aside the attack power, Just the might of the attack alone was enough to scare a bunch of people to death. In the face of such an attack, Qingpin's expression did not change at all. Trash is trash. No matter how many there are, it's still trash. The poor girl mocked without any trace of politeness. She slightly spat out her red lips, and another 3 petals fell from the white lotus and were burned into ashes. The remaining 20 tornadoes disappeared without a trace, just like the previous 4 tornadoes. Pfft. Rina Takasaka spat out a mouthful of blood. It was worth noting that Rina Takasaka's blood was not red. Instead, it was transparent with a hint of green. The color of her blood proved once again that Rina Takasaka was not human, but a genuine Yuan Ko. Losing the 24 tornadoes and the mental power that was attached to them was no different from being hit by a car. This greatly injured Takasaka Rina's body, but at the same time, it also allowed Takasaka Rina to figure out how to make her tornado disappear. It's those petals. It's those petals, right? Rina Takasaka stared at Qingpin and questioned. Your petals can cut off my control over the wind element. That must be it. Based on what happened earlier, Rina Takasaka guessed that the white lotus formed by the 20 leaves was the reason why her skill disappeared. The first time it was 1, the second 2, and the third time it was 3. Every time the petals were incinerated, her skill would disappear, and she would lose contact with it. There was no need to deduce the cause and effect relationship in this matter. The root of all the problems was on this white lotus. There was no mistake about it. Faced with Rina Takasaka's question, Qingpin did not say a word. Her expression was cold as usual, as if she did not hear what Rina Takasaka said. Qingpin, what do you think of this move of mine? Rina Takasaka panted. Her body trembled, and another 24 tornadoes rose from the ground. But this time, Rina Takasaka did not choose to surround Qingpin with the tornadoes like before. Instead, she fused all the tornadoes together. The 24 tornadoes began to approach the other tornadoes. Suddenly, one of the tornadoes tore open its eye and swallowed the other tornadoes into its body, forming an even larger tornado. Following that, the larger tornado opened its mouth again and again. Within 10 seconds, it had swallowed all the other tornadoes into its body, and the 24 tornadoes fused together to form a powerful tornado. Although the 24 tornadoes had fused together, the size of the tornado did not change at all. It still looked like a tornado. Think about it. If 24 tornadoes fused together without any change in size, then its power and density must have undergone a great change. Compared to the previous 24 tornadoes, this tornado, be it in terms of speed or density, is dozens or even hundreds of times more powerful than the previous tornadoes. As this tornado spun, the space around it was torn apart. We can see spatial cracks being torn in space. To be able to tear apart space with pure speed is a terrifying power. Just this tornado alone shows that Rina Takasaka's strength has surpassed the nether rank Yuan Ko, reaching the standard of the meteor rank Yuan Ko. To be able to tear apart space with pure speed. This is one of the criteria that separates the nether rank from the meteor rank. Qingpin, can you withstand my tornado of annihilation? Rina Takasaka laughed bitterly and spat out more than 10 mouthfuls of blood. This tornado of annihilation was already at the level of a forbidden spell. With her current strength, she was still unable to control such a powerful technique. She had to expend her life force to use it. However, Rina Takasaka's technique was valuable. At the very least, when the young girl Qingpin saw the tornado of annihilation flying towards her, she frowned for the first time, but it was only a slight frown. Intercept. It was another intercept, but this time, a total of 10 petals fell from the white lotus and were burned to ashes. On the other hand, the astonishing tornado also turned into nothingness, just like before. Ha! I get it now. Seeing that her ultimate move, which she had worked so hard to prepare, was rendered useless once more, not only did Rina Takasaka not feel dejected, she even smiled. Destroying my skill requires the number of petals of your white lotus flower. The stronger my skill is, the more petals it will consume. Am I right, poor? Yes. She originally thought that she wouldn't receive a response from Seiji just like before, but she didn't expect that Reina Takasaka would actually reply with a yes. This suddenly made Reina Takasaka feel like thanking God for his grace. But what can you do? Qing Pin retorted, her tone filled with disdain. What can I do? Come, Qing Pin, take a look at this. Reina Takasaka stretched out her hand and opened her palm. A tiny black ball the size of a longan floated above her palm. Moreover, the volume of this small ball was still slowly changing, gradually becoming larger. Qing Pin, do you know what the limit of air and wind control is? Reina Takasaka laughed bitterly and spat out more mouthfuls of blood. I don't know, and there's no need for me to know. Qing Pin replied coldly. Haha, then let me tell you. The limit of wind control is the absence of wind. Reina Takasaka clenched her teeth. The black ball floating above her palm had already grown to the size of a ping-pong ball. Wind is the flow of air. As long as there is air, there will be wind. In a calm space, as long as there is air, there will be the flow of wind. To surpass the limit of wind is to make the wind disappear. In order to make the wind disappear, you must make the air disappear as well. This is the so-called vacuum. Reina Takasaka was kind enough to explain the effects of her skills to him. Finish. Reina Takasaka tossed the black ball in her hand to Poverty Ken's side. Then, the black ball exploded, or rather, it sucked in all the air in the surroundings. With Reina Takasaka at the center, the black ball sucked in the air at a speed that surpassed its limit. The speed was so fast that the surrounding air could not catch up to the speed of the black ball's absorption. As a result, a vacuum was formed in a small space in an instant. This small space rapidly expanded, and soon, Qing Pin was also enveloped in it. Nonsense. Vacuum has no effect on the Sword Maiden. Qing Pin said coldly as she looked at the expanding vacuum that was about to envelop her. She had no intention of using the petals of the white lotus to get rid of the vacuum. Just as Qing Pin had said, vacuum was meaningless to the Sword Maiden. The space within the scabbard and the dimensional space was a vacuum without any air. As a Sword Maiden who did not need to breathe, vacuum had almost no effect on her. Haha, of course it doesn't matter to you, Qing Pin. But don't forget that you still have your beloved Gohan behind you. Hearing Reina Takasaka's proud words, Qing Pin's expression finally changed. With a flick of her hand, the remaining petals of the white lotus in the sky fell to the ground in an attempt to get rid of the vacuum. However, only 4 of the 20 petals of the white lotus were left. The remaining 4 petals could only stop the vacuum from expanding for 4 seconds. 4 seconds later, the vacuum had completely swallowed Qing Pin and Gohan. Seeing that the vacuum had completely swallowed Gohan and Qing Pin, Reina Takasaka could no longer suppress the boiling blood in her body. Like a fountain, Reina Takasaka spat out half of her body's volume of blood. I used up more than half of the wind elemental energy in my body to cast this skill. It's more than 10 times more exhausting than the apocalyptic tornado. Qing Pin, you only have 4 petals left. How can you possibly get rid of my vacuum? Reina Takasaka, who was extremely weak, collapsed to the ground and muttered to herself, It's true that the vacuum can't kill the poor, but it's enough to kill Gohan. In 10 seconds, Gohan, who's already injured, will have his blood sucked dry by the vacuum and die. As long as Gohan is dead, the masterless Qing Pin will turn back into a sword. Qing Pin, just what kind of Sword Maiden are you? If not for Gohan, I'm afraid I'll be the one dying today. To be on the safe side, Reina Takasaka maintained the vacuum sphere for a full 2 minutes before it finally dissipated. Chapter 272. After spitting out a dozen mouthfuls of blood, Reina Takasaka was 90% certain that she could see Gohan being killed by the vacuum and Chinpin transforming back into her sword form due to Gohan's death. That way, she would be able to return to the Luinian family residence to complete her quest. When the vacuum gradually dissipated, Rina Takasaka only saw a figure lying on the ground. Apart from that, there was no one else standing. Rina Takasaka breathed a sigh of relief. The figure on the ground was undoubtedly Gohan, and Chinpin should have transformed back into her sword form. Unfortunately, Rina Takasaka was completely disappointed. The figure on the ground slowly floated up, and her long black hair fluttered in the wind. This hair was not something that Gohan should have. The figure that floated up could only be the young girl, Chinpin. The light in Rina Takasaka's eyes dimmed. Since Haru was still in the form of a tortoise, it meant that the solid Han was still alive. Her final move had failed. Chinpin, who was floating in the air, straightened her body. There was another person lying on the ground behind her. It seemed that Chinpin had been lying on top of Gohan's body earlier. The two of them overlapped, giving Rina Takasaka the illusion that there was only one figure. Rina Takasaka finally understood why Gohan was still alive. When the vacuum enveloped them, Chinpin had been lying on top of Gohan's body and sealed her mouth over Gohan's. That was how Gohan was able to maintain the balance of air in his body. Only by doing so could he maintain the air that Gohan needed to survive. Don't you find this move familiar? Yes, back in the dungeon, Artoria had used this move as well. Back then, they were in the middle of a nuclear bomb. This time, they were in a vacuum. However, compared to the nuclear bomb, the vacuum was much worse. If she had only sealed his mouth, she would not have been able to save Gohan's life. Clearly, when Chinpin sealed Gohan's body, Chinpin had done something else. Otherwise, Gohan would have died. You actually made me kiss a human? When Chinpin stood up again, her face was filled with disgust. Yes, disgust. It seemed that she was disgusted by the fact that she had kissed Gohan. It seemed that Chinpin and Chinpin were two separate personalities. Cute Chinpin was a child who slept in Gohan's arms every day. It was impossible for her to hate Gohan. Based on this, you don't have the right to live. Chinpin's voice was so cold that it seemed to be able to freeze the air. Do you think you've got me? I can still fight you. Rina Takasaka used her air sword to prop herself up and raised her long sword. She was prepared to end the battle in a melee. Since she was no match for Chinpin's air sword, she might have a chance of surviving in a melee. Although she had mainly received elemental skills training in the Fleeting Time family, she had also learned some of the Fleeting Time family's unique swordsmanship. Young Chinpin was a weak girl. Perhaps a melee attack was the right choice. Humph, stubborn. Young Chinpin looked at Rina Takasaka, who was charging at her with her air sword. Young Chinpin had a look of disdain on her face. With a thought, a white lotus floated in front of Chinpin. Unlike the previous white lotus flower, this white lotus flower was not temporarily pieced together from tree leaves. Instead, it flew out from the poor girl's body. At the same time, this white lotus only had 6 petals. Unlike the previous one, which had a total of 20 petals. After releasing the white lotus, Chinpin's face instantly turned yellow. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. It was completely different from how she looked when she was fighting earlier. It seemed like this white lotus that was born from her body had drained a lot of her energy. It's still too weak. Not even 1,000th of it. Young Chinpin mumbled. Forget it. Using the holy green lotus to deal with this woman is already making a mountain out of a molehill. If Song Hama was here and heard young Chinpin's words, he would definitely complain about the holy green lotus. Judging from the color, it was clearly a holy white lotus that flew out. Sever a technique was different from the simple sever from before. This time, the poor girl actually spat out 2 words. From this point of view, the white lotus attack this time was definitely more heaven-defying than the previous one. As expected, as soon as Chinpin gave the order, one of the petals on the white lotus fell. However, it did not burn to ashes. Instead, it slowly flew toward Rina Takasaka like an autumn leaf dancing in the sky. There's no need to dodge. When she touches me, my sword will already be at Qingpin's throat. Seeing the petals dancing, Rina Takasaka was a little cautious. However, when she realized that the petals were too slow, Rina Takasaka let her guard down. She tried her best to close the distance between her and Qingpin so that she could engage in close combat with him. However, the petals that seemed to be drifting slowly in Rina Takasaka's eyes magically appeared in front of her. Rina Takasaka did not even see the trajectory of the petals clearly before it appeared in front of her and stuck itself between her brows. Like a facial cleanser, it melted into Rina Takasaka's body. Rina Takaban felt an indescribable will enter her body through the space between her brows. Then, it mysteriously slashed a sword through her body, severing a certain heartstring in her mind. Rina Takasaka instantly stopped moving. She stood on the ground in a daze. She stretched her hand out in front of her. Her hand was fine, but the air sword in her hand was nowhere to be seen. There's nothing strange about it. This is the same method that nullified my skill. I'll just create another air sword. Rina Takasaka thought of using the wind element to compress another air sword. However, no matter how hard she tried, the new air sword did not appear. Not only was there no new air sword, the air around Rina Takasaka did not even budge. It was as if Rina Takasaka had not used her skill at all. Wind come, wind come, wind come. The panicked Rina Takasaka kept trying to control the wind element, but the wind element in the air ignored her commands. It was as if Rina Takasaka was a Chunibyu girl. She could not control the wind element. This was unimaginable to Rina Takasaka. Controlling the wind element was her innate ability. Being unable to control the wind element was like a normal person being unable to eat or a person who had been writing all their lives being unable to write a single word. It's that petal? Did the petal cut off my ability to control the wind element? A terrifying thought appeared in Rina Takasaka's mind. Compared to Annihilation's own skill, it was on a completely different level. No, I can't fight anymore. I have to go. For the first time, the thought of running away rose in Rina Takasaka's mind. Then, she decisively started running, just like how Gohan had decided to run away earlier. Not to mention, Rina Takasaka's speed of escape was quite fast. She ran like a small train. If she had not lost her ability to control the wind, she would have been able to ride on the wind, and her speed would be similar to a small plane. Intercept vision. Qingpin snorted coldly. Another white lotus petal fell and instantly appeared in between Rina Takasaka's brows, fusing into her body. Then, Rina Takasaka, who was running at high speed, suddenly staggered and fell to the ground. Rina Takasaka, who was running, suddenly felt the same mysterious sword that she had felt before she lost her ability. Rina Takasaka's vision went black. Rina Takasaka lost her balance and fell. Why can't I see clearly? What's wrong with my eyes? Rina Takasaka was shocked. Her eyes did not suffer any damage, but she had suddenly lost her sight, just like how she had lost her ability to control the wind element. Could it be that not only can Qingpin cut off my control over the wind, but she can also cut off my sight? Rina Takasaka had a terrifying guess. Intercept vision. Another white lotus petal fell and fused into Rina Takasaka's body. This time, Rina Takasaka realized that she had lost her sense of hearing. She could no longer hear anything from the outside. Intercept vision. Qingpin continued to strip Rina Takasaka of her various abilities. This time, it was Rina Takasaka's turn to lose her sense of touch. The feeling of soil that came through her skin had also disappeared from her mind. The fifth petal of intercept vision. Rina Takasaka lost control of her limbs again. None of her body parts could respond to the commands from Rina Takasaka's brain. At this time, Rina Takasaka had lost her 5 basic abilities. She had become a prisoner, a prisoner trapped in her own body, and what was being held captive was Rina Takasaka's soul. Intercept vision. Rina Takasaka had lost all ability to resist like a dead fish. Young Chinpin had no intention of letting her go. She spat out the two words, intercept vision. As the name suggested, this time, young Chinpin was going to intercept Rina Takasaka's soul. Once her soul disappeared, Rina Takasaka would die. Even the Ian-level Yuan Ko would not be able to save her. As Chinpin spat out the two words, the last petal of the white lotus fell and appeared between Rina Takasaka's brows, ready to take her life. Save me, father. Rina Takasaka, who was trapped in the depths of her consciousness, knew that it was time to decide her life. However, she did not want to die. She screamed from the depths of her soul. Sigh, wrong, wrong. It's ultimately wrong. Takasaka Rina's soul heard the sigh. Then, a huge hand appeared out of thin air and covered Takasaka Rina's body. The petal that had fallen to the ground touched the huge hand. The moment it touched the hand, the petal was burned into a thick black smoke. A fingernail-sized dent was left on the hand, as if it had lost a piece of flesh. Forgive us, lady. We were wrong. A low voice came from the sky. Then, the large hand grabbed Rina Takasaka's body and returned to the void, disappearing without a trace. Meddlesome! The young girl cursed as she looked at the disappearing hand. The battle ended just like that. Chapter 273. When did you wake up? Chinpin turned around and saw Gohan standing behind her. Unbeknownst to her, the unconscious Gohan had already woken up. It should be when Chinpin got rid of Rina Takasaka's ability. Gohan forced a smile and explained, as soon as her ability disappeared, the wind needles on my acupoints disappeared as well, and I woke up. It's better for you to stay unconscious. Chinpin sneered at Gohan, which made Gohan's heart ache. His Chinpin, the cute Chinpin, actually sneered at him, looking at him with a cold and disdainful smile. Before Chinpin, Gohan felt like a lowly dog. Chinpin, the battle is over. Let's go home. Gohan suddenly felt tired. Even when he was on the verge of death, he didn't feel this tired. He did not ask why the poor man had suddenly turned into a young girl, nor did he ask why the poor man was so cold to him. He knew that asking would not yield any result. He just wanted to end things quickly and return home, so that he could use time to solve these problems. Gohan walked forward, wanting to hold Chinpin's hand and bring Chinpin home. However, before Gohan could take a few steps, he was stopped by Chinpin. Human, keep your distance. I'm noble, and you are lowly. Do you understand? Stop it, or I, Gohan, will get angry. Gohan's face suddenly turned cold. Chinpin's words were too hurtful. Chinpin, I don't know how noble you are right now, but you are my sword mistress. I have the right to touch you, care for you, and love you. Nonsense. Chinpin looked at Gohan with killing intent. No one has the right to do such a thing to Chinpin. Really? Gohan suddenly laughed, his face full of love. Poor, you forgot, you like Gohan the most, you like to hug Gohan the most asleep, you like to put your feet into Gohan's mouth the most, you like to eat meat the most, you like to wipe your greasy hands on Gohan's face the most, you like to sleep, you like to lie in the baby pouch on Gohan's chest the most, you like to listen to Gohan tell you the love story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs the most, you like to sleep the most, you like to lie in the baby pouch on Gohan's chest the most, you like to listen to Gohan tell you the love story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. These are all evidence of your favorite Gohan. How could you even forget these? Logically speaking, Gohan's lines made the author feel a little disgusted. You. Every word that Gohan said was incomparably disgusting to Chinpin's ears. Chinpin's face was covered in a layer of frost. By the time Gohan finished speaking, Chinpin's face could already be used as a refrigerator. I'm starting to regret saving you. Chinpin gritted her teeth. I'm going to deprive you of your 5 senses. To me, it's enough that you're still alive. As Chinpin spoke, another 6-petal white lotus flew out of her body. This white lotus kept spinning, and as long as a petal fell, Gohan would lose one of his senses, just like Rina Kosaka. In the end, he would become a prisoner of his body, no different from the human swine from thousands of years ago. Chinpin, I know that what I said just now will make you angry to the point that you want to kill me. But do you know why I still said it? Looking at the spinning white lotus, Gohan was neither afraid nor angry. Instead, his face was calm and composed. Why? Chinpin truly had no idea why Gohan would deliberately provoke her in her current state. Because I want to know if you're still my sword maiden. Gohan smiled brightly. Chinpin, come into my embrace. Humph, how could I? When Chinpin heard Gohan's order, her face was filled with disdain. It was as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. But very soon, something even more ridiculous happened. Chinpin's body actually walked to Gohan's side and allowed Gohan to embrace her. Why? Why is this happening? The poor girl was dumbfounded. Her own body actually didn't listen to her own control and automatically walked into the embrace of the solid cold. Was this body still her own? Chinpin, withdraw your skill. I'm scared just looking at it. Gohan didn't answer Chinpin's question. Instead, he ordered Chinpin to withdraw the spinning white lotus back into her body. Sure enough, although Chinpin was unwilling and uncooperative, the white lotus quickly returned to Chinpin's body. I said, you're my sword maiden. You'll be my sword maiden for life. Gohan tightly embraced Chinpin in his embrace. Chinpin, who had turned into a young girl, was no longer the cute girl that Gohan could tightly wrap around with one hand. She was a girl that Gohan could only hug with 2 hands. Her body completely filled Gohan's embrace. Her figure was exquisite, and her body exuded a lemon-like fragrance. No matter how one looked at it, no matter how one felt, Chinpin was already a young girl. Chinpin, your sword scar is still floating in my Zifu. I can still sense your soul through the sword scar. I can feel the bond between us. We are one. I am your sword wielder, and you are my sword maiden. The sword maiden listens to the sword wielder's command. This is a fact that has never changed since ancient times. Even if you are a spirit sword, an immortal sword, or an emperor's sword, even if you surpass an emperor's sword and reach an unprecedented level, you still have to abide by this bond because our souls have already fused together. Gohan murmured, I'm starting to regret saving you. Chinpin finally understood why her body didn't listen to her control, but instead listened to Gohan's command. It was because of the sword scar. If I had known earlier, I would have let that woman destroy your sword scar. That would have been the best choice. Chinpin said indignantly. The facial features on her face were squeezed together mischievously. She once again had the cute style of Chinpin. I know. Gohan forcefully touched Chinpin's head. Gohan, the reason why I can live today is all because of Chinpin's great mercy. Gohan thanks you. Gohan sincerely thanks my family's Chinpin. If it wasn't for Chinpin today, Gohan would have really died. I'm going to kill you. You actually dared to touch my head. Chinpin, who was in Gohan's embrace, continued to angrily curse. Alright, if killing me will make you happy. Gohan let go of his hand and took a step back. He stood opposite Chinpin. I won't order you through the sword scar now. Chinpin, you can now control your own actions. I'm at your disposal. After saying that, Gohan closed her eyes. It seemed that she was really willing to let Chinpin punish her. Kill her or dismember her, as Chinpin wished. This is a trick to trick little girls. Chinpin sneered. The white lotus floated out of her body again. Sever or desire. Chinpin spat out these 2 words. A petal slowly fell from the white lotus. Then, it stuck to Gohan's eyebrows and merged into it. Pooh! Gohan felt something sink in his arms. He opened his eyes and saw the young girl, Chinpin, falling into his arms. Of course, she did not fall into Gohan's arms of her own accord. Instead, she fell into Gohan's arms like a domino. At this time, Qingpin's eyes were already closed. This child was too tired and had fallen asleep. This battlefield. Wuzhang Shifang, who was standing on the heavenly sword of gathering clouds, jumped down from the flying sword and arrived at the battlefield where Qingpin and Rina Takasaka had fought. Looking at the battlefield that had been razed to the ground, Wuzhang Shifang was shocked. This is the power of the meteor realm Yuan Ko. A very pure wind element, just like the wind elemental king in my previous life. The heavenly sword of gathering clouds automatically transformed into a sword mistress. She had fought for more than 900 years with Yuan Ko. She knew more about him than Wuzhang Shifang. Just by looking at the remaining wind elements in the air, she could tell that Yuan Ko was a pure wind elemental Yuan Ko. According to the location of the personal terminal, the sword-bearer is still here. When Wuzhang Shifang went out, he specifically asked Wu Dao for a special permission, which was the permission to locate Guhan's personal terminal. However, Guhan's personal terminal seemed to be in a block state. Yuzhang City's monitoring center could not locate Guhan at all. But 3 minutes ago, something changed. The control center once again successfully locked onto Guhan's location. This location was where Wuzhang Shifang was at this time. He's over there. Tenzamukimo pointed to a place blocked by the ruins and immediately flashed over. Wuzhang Shifang shook his head, followed behind Tenzamukimo, and appeared there. Sure enough, Guhan, who was covered in injuries and had 4 broken fingers, was lying in the ruins in a coma. Give this to him. Wuzhang Shifang took out a capsule from his dimensional pocket and asked Tenzamukimo to stuff it into Guhan's mouth. This was a capsule that could help people regain consciousness. Of course, it also had a certain healing effect. Senior Wuzhang, did you save me? Wuzhang Shifang's medicine was very effective. In a few seconds, Guhan woke up, and then his eyes were full of surprise and gratitude. Obviously, Guhan thought that Wuzhang Shifang saved him. I didn't save you. Wuzhang Shifang was disdainful of such a misunderstanding and chose to deny it immediately. However, before he could finish speaking, Guhan rolled over and knelt in front of Wuzhang Shifang. He raised his hands and presented a dazzling dimensional crystal to Wuzhang Shifang with both hands. This was the prince seed that Wuzhang Shifang had specially come to find. Guhan is unable to repay Senior Wuzhang's great kindness. Guhan can only offer this prince seed to Sword Immortal Wuzhang. I hope that Sword Immortal will not reject Guhan's sincerity. Guhan's words sounded sincere. However, Wuzhang Shifang was not very interested in whether Guhan was sincere or not. He cared more about this prince seed. Since the other party had already offered it with both hands, it would be impolite for Wuzhang Shifang to refuse. This prince seed is in my hand. Wuzhang Shifang directly placed the prince seed into his dimensional pocket. Then, he touched his personal terminal on Guhan's personal terminal and transferred 500 million renminbi into it. Here's the money. Keep it well. Before Wuzhang Shifang could finish speaking, Guhan immediately transferred the 500 million yuan back to Wuzhang Shifang. What's the meaning of this? Do you think I, Wuzhang Shifang, will care about a mere 500 million yuan? Wuzhang Shifang's face turned cold. Guhan's return made him feel insulted. Senior Wuzhang, Guhan would never dare to insult you. Guhan only has one request. I hope that Sword Immortal Wuzhang will accept Guhan as a disciple and let Guhan listen to the Sword Immortal's teachings at all times. I beg you, Senior Wuzhang. Chapter 274. The master-disciple relationship was not a common one in this world. After becoming a swordsman, the swordsman did not need to learn any advanced moves or technique. Most of the moves were already known by the sword mistress. The swordsman only needed to hide behind the sword mistress and learn how to protect himself. For a swordsman, the most important thing was combat experience. Learning how to use the sword mistress flexibly in battle and how to protect oneself was the key. Originally, these things needed to be taught by the senior swordsman. However, ever since the advent of the game, every swordsman could fully hone their combat experience in actual combat, which was several times more useful than a teacher's teachings. For example, when Gohan became Wuzhang Shifang's disciple, Wuzhang Shifang could only teach Gohan some combat experience. As for swordsmanship, Wuzhang Shifang might not even be as good as Gohan, who had mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. The only person who could really teach Gohan swordsmanship was the sword master, and Wuzhang Shifang was not a sword master. There were only 2 sword masters among all the immortal sword wielders. In ancient times, the master-disciple relationship was prevalent because the skills of the master could be passed on to the disciple. The skills of the master could also be passed on to the disciple. In order to pass on their skills, the master was willing to accept a disciple, and the disciple was also willing to find a powerful master. However, the strength of the swordsman mainly depended on the sword mistress herself, and the sword mistress could only be passed on through the bloodline. There was no situation where the master taught a disciple, and the disciple could inherit the sword mistress from the master. From the perspective of the disciple, he could not get much from the master, but he might be restricted by the master. For the master, he could not teach the disciple anything useful, and the disciple could not pass on anything from the master. Therefore, the master-disciple relationship was not common in this world, because the benefits of the master-disciple relationship were not much. However, when the master became an immortal sword wielder, it was very different, because the master of the immortal sword wielder had a special ability. The wielder of the immortal sword tier could tear through the void from thousands of kilometers away and exert their power to pull someone back to their side, just like the pair of giant hands that had pulled Rina Takasaka away earlier. This was the fundamental reason why Gohan suddenly wanted to become Wuzhang Shifang's disciple. Originally, Gohan was an extremely arrogant person and did not think that he needed to have anyone as his master, so he had never thought about this. According to Gohan's plan, he wanted to use his own strength to kill his way to immortal sword wielder, then ascend the throne and become an emperor sword wielder. However, after this experience, especially the helplessness he felt when facing Medusa and Reina Takasaka, Gohan suddenly understood. To hell with pride and dignity. Nothing was more important than his own life. He did not activate the protagonist aura. If not for Qing Pin's sudden release, he would have been crippled by Rina. If not for Qing Pin, he, Takasaka, and all, the same thing would be. Especially since Rina Takasaka had coveted Qing Pin. Now that Rina Takasaka had failed, there would definitely be other people like Kyosuke Takasaka, Tongo Takasaka, Kayanori Takasaka, and Inako Takasaka who would come to snatch Qing Pin from him. Initially, Gohan did not understand why the mastermind would want to snatch Qing Pin. When he saw the young girl Qing Pin's strength, Gohan understood that Qing Pin was definitely not as simple as an ancient sword wielder. There must be a huge secret behind her, and this secret would attract the mastermind to continuously send assassins. After Reina Takasaka's failure, the mastermind probably wouldn't be so kind as to use green silk to cut off his sword mark. It would be more straightforward to just kill him. But why did the mastermind use green silk to cut off his sword mark in the first place? Wouldn't the cost be too high? Green silk was not any less precious than a prince-type treasure. Regarding this point, Gohan still could not understand. Well, it seemed that he had gone off topic. Back to Gohan's apprenticeship. The reason why Gohan wanted to be apprenticed to Wuzhang Shifang was to prepare in advance for the possible attack of the mastermind. If he was no match for the enemy, he could immediately call for his master, Wuzhang Shifang, to extend a huge hand and save him from danger. From this, it could be seen that life and death experiences could indeed make a person change greatly. If it was the Gohan of the past, he would probably not want to be apprenticed to someone even if he was beaten to death. Hearing Gohan's request, Wuzhang Shifang was stunned at first, but then he smiled playfully. Of course, he did not think that Gohan truly admired him and wanted to be apprenticed to him. He could see through the fundamental purpose of Gohan's apprenticeship at a glance. It was to obtain his protection. Wuzhang Shifang did not directly answer Gohan's request, but asked Gohan in return. Immortal sword bearers rarely accept disciples. Do you know why? I don't know. Gohan shook his head. In fact, he knew, he was just pretending not to know. If he wanted to be apprenticed to a master, he should not pretend to know everything in front of his master. This was a saying from experience. You little guys, all you see is us immortal sword bearers using the giant world-breaking hand to save our disciples from thousands of miles away, but you don't know the price of using the giant world-breaking hand. Wuzhang Shifang extended his right palm. This hand of mine is going to suffer a huge dimensional backlash. I'm afraid I won't be able to use this hand for at least 20 days. That's why immortal sword bearers rarely accept disciples, especially ancient sword bearers like you. It's common for you to encounter life-threatening situations 4 or 5 times a day. I don't have that much energy to spend on you. Wuzhang Shifang shook his head. I'm not interested in taking disciples. Disciples are just a burden. Forget 500 million renminbi, even 50 billion won't make me nod. Take this money. Increasing your strength is the way to go. Don't even think about using me. F***ck, let's go. After saying this, Wuzhang Shifang was about to leave with Tian Songyun. He had already obtained the Grand Prince seed, so there was no need for him to waste any more time with Gohan. Shifang, I think you should take him as a disciple. This young man is quite sincere. Tian Songyun did not immediately leave with Wuzhang Shifang. Instead, he smiled and tried to persuade Wuzhang Shifang. Tian Songyun's thinking was very simple. The bloodline of the Gu family could not be severed. Whether Gohan was good or bad, he was the descendant of Gu Xuanwu. F***ck, if you like him, you can take him as a disciple. Shifang, I'm not interested. Wuzhang Shifang was a little annoyed. From his point of view, Gohan was an idiot talking nonsense. A timid and cunning young man was not worthy of being his disciple. Moreover, his heavenly cumulus sword seemed to have an inexplicable relationship with this young man. This made Wuzhang Shifang feel very vexed. Senior Shifang, what if there is a prefecture king seed? I wonder if you can accept this lowly one as a disciple. Of course, Gohan knew that 500 million renminbi was not enough to make a sword immortal agree to accept him as a disciple. Therefore, the condition he was prepared to exchange with Wuzhang Shifang was not the 500 million renminbi, but the prefecture king seed that Gohan obtained. Prefecture king seed. Hearing the words prefecture king seed, even Wuzhang Shifang could not help but stop in his tracks. He began to seriously consider Gohan's suggestion. The Grand Prince seed was a treasure that could increase Jiandi's endurance in battle. It was something that Jiandi wanted at all costs. At a lower level, the Prefecture King seed was a treasure that sword immortals wanted to obtain at all costs. Compared to the Grand Prince seed, which was produced every few decades, the Prefecture King seed would be dug out every few years. However, the total number was not enough for the sword immortals to distribute. Take Wuzhang Shifang as an example. He had only obtained one Duke seed in his life, and it was because of that Duke seed that he managed to kill his way into the Fusang Divine Branch's base camp on Fusang Island. He forced the Fusang Divine Branch's universe-level and universe-level Great Yuans to negotiate with him, and they allowed him to take away the Fusang Divine Branch's Sword Mother's main body. However, that Prefecture King seed had already used up the sword essence in the crystal during that battle, and it had become a piece of useless rock. From then on, Wuzhang Shifang never obtained a single Duke seed again. Currently, there were no dukedom seeds for sale in the market. Even if there were, it was not something that could be bought with money. Instead, one would have to pay a huge price for it. Compared to this price, taking in a disciple was nothing. Wuzhang Shifang had never expected that this little sword wielder would not only have a grand prince seed, but also a prefecture king seed. This prefecture king seed had successfully scratched Wuzhang Shifang's itch. He had a big plan, and if he wanted to realize this plan, he needed everything that could increase his fighting power. Take out your prefecture king seed. Wuzhang Shifang turned around and ordered Gohan. Gohan did not hesitate, and he straightforwardly took out a prefecture king seed from his dimensional pocket and placed it on his palm. At this moment, if Wuzhang Shifang wanted to snatch it, Gohan's prefecture king seed would be snatched away by him in less than a second. Of course, Wuzhang Shifang could not bring himself to do such a thing, especially when his sword lady was watching. If you take this prefecture king seed, I can give you a chance, Wuzhang Shifang said coldly. Wuzhang Shifang said coldly, I, Wuzhang Shifang, either don't accept disciples, or I accept the strongest one. You're a student of Yuzhang University, right? I don't care if you have the qualifications to participate in the 8th Academy Tournament. In short, if you can get first place in the 8th Academy Tournament in 3 months, I will accept you as my disciple. If you can't get it, then I won't return this prefecture king seed to you. Whether you want this chance or not, it's up to you. After saying that, Wuzhang Shifang shut his mouth and coldly waited for Gohan's final decision. To be honest, Wuzhang Shifang's condition was very harsh. The first place in the 8th Academy Tournament would have to compete with tens of thousands of sword wielder of the same generation. In terms of probability, there was only a 0.1% chance of winning. For this 0.1% chance, Gohan had to offer a prefecture king seed. No matter how one looked at it, it was not worth it. Okay. Gohan did not hesitate and sent the prefecture king seed to Wuzhang Shifang with both hands, indicating that he accepted this opportunity. This was because in Gohan's eyes, the success rate was not 0.1% but 100%. However, Senior Shifang, I have a condition that you would like to amend, Gohan suddenly said. What condition? Wuzhang Shifang's face turned cold. I will not lower my standards. First place in the ancient sword tier? I wonder if it can be changed to first place in the treasure sword tier. Gohan smiled honestly. In 3 months, I will be a treasure sword tier sword wielder. Wuzhang Shifang was speechless. This guy called Gohan was really confident in himself. Chapter 275. Old Wang, has everything been arranged? In a small tea room, a man who looked to be in his 50s was carefully brewing tea leaves in his hand. If someone who was very familiar with tea leaves was here, they would jump in fright at first glance at these tea leaves. This man was brewing Dahong Pao tea, and it was the most authentic Dahong Pao tea. How many years had it been? Wui Mountain had long since become the headquarters of Yuan Zhen's forces in the eastern immortal world. Obtaining a bit of Dahong Pao from Wui Mountain was much more difficult than killing a universe Yuan Zhen. Yet, this man actually had such a large amount of Dahong Pao. This was simply unimaginable. It has been arranged. The young lady has been sent into the Dao fusion pool. Soak in it for a few days, and the Dao planted in the young lady's body will fuse with the young lady's body. This is a good opportunity for the young lady's strength to improve further, replied old Wang, who was dressed in a long robe. I was too impatient this time. I didn't think that I would actually force out the true body of this poor lady. In this way, I'm afraid that this poor lady and that boy will not be able to separate. The middle-aged man sighed. This man was the mastermind behind Rina Takasaka, the current family head of the Fleeting family, and Liuyan Ling's father, Fleeting Su. No, sir. The old family head was the one who gave the order, not you. It was the old family head who insisted on taking back the sword of Qinpin by force. You have always been against it. This has nothing to do with you, comforted Old Wang. Old Wang comforted Fleeting Su. What he said was the truth. Fleeting Su had once had a conflict with his father, Fleeting Wooden Fish. Unfortunately, Fleeting Wooden Fish's father's identity had overpowered Fleeting Su, and Fleeting Su had no choice but to agree to Fleeting Wooden Fish's plan and send the fake Rina Takasaka to steal the Sword of Virtue. There's nothing more to say. Take good care of the young lady. I'm going to look for my father. This matter is far from over. Fleeting Su picked up a pot of Dahong Pao and prepared to leave. My lord, what about the young lady? We tricked her into going to Chongyang Mountain. If she finds out that we lied to her, the entire Fleeting family will turn upside down, said the Dragon King when he saw that Fleeting Su was about to leave. Who said I lied to Ling? A loving smile appeared on Fleeting Su's face at the mention of Liunian Ling. Haotian Jiendi has just contacted me. He has confirmed the changes in Chongyang Mountain. She's about to be born. Is that goddess finally going to be born? Lao Wang sucked in a breath of cold air. He was not afraid, but pleasantly surprised. Once the one from Chongyang Mountain was born, the possibility of smoothly passing through the Third Sword Desolation era would greatly increase. Around 6:00 in the evening, Guhan came out of the medical chamber and returned to his tent at Luoting Camp. The impact of what happened today on Guhan was second only to the incident 12 years ago when his family was destroyed. Similarly, the change in Guhan's outlook on life and values was also second only to the incident 12 years ago. The first thing he did when he returned to his tent was to place Qingpin on the bed and massage her back. After Qingpin fainted in Guhan's arms, she turned back into the adorable little Qingpin. She became the chubby and adorable Qingpin who stayed in Guhan's arms all day long, which healed Guhan's heart. However, Guhan was not sure whether Qingpin's personality would be the original adorable Qingpin or the noble, venomous-tongued girl, Qingpin. If it was the latter, then Guhan would be very worried about his future life. It would not be comfortable to live with that kind of Qingpin. After settling down Qingpin, Guhan sat quietly on the chair and did not say a word. He was trying hard to think and recall everything that happened today. He wanted to connect everything together and go through it carefully. In particular, the change in Qingpin was something that Guhan wanted to understand. Guhan, who was in a coma, was not completely ignorant. At the very least, Guhan was aware of the entire process of the green silk beheading entering his Zifu and painting his entire sword scar green. Finally, he was dragged into the sword scar by a chain. Guhan was aware of the entire process. Guhan also had a very comprehensive understanding of green hair Sever's information. At that time, when Guhan saw that his sword scar was painted green, Guhan was already in despair. He also took it for granted that the sword scar between him and Qingpin would disappear, and Qingpin would be completely separated from him. But what happened next, Guhan could not imagine, especially that chain. This made Guhan recall the process of him synchronizing with Qingpin and giving birth to Qingpin. He remembered that at that time, Guhan saw a flash of a dozen chains binding Qingpin there. Thinking about it, the chain that pulled green hair Sever back into the sword scar was one of the chains that bound Qingpin's body. Combined with the later appearance of Qingpin, the young girl Qingpin, who was strong enough to crush Yuan Ko at the Meteor Realm. Combining the information he knew, Guhan had such a guess. The young girl Qingpin should be Qingpin's true appearance, and the chain should be the spell that sealed Qingpin. Because green hair Sever's attack on Qingpin's sword scar destroyed a part of the seal, or it could be said that it weakened part of the seal's power, which allowed Qingpin to temporarily escape from the state of being sealed and return to her original appearance. Similarly, because of the seal's power, the sword scar that should have disappeared miraculously preserved, allowing Guhan to still maintain the connection between him and Qingpin, and not be cut off by green hair Sever's sword scar. But in the end, why did the chain grab green hair Sever into the sword scar? Gohan did not quite understand. Could it be that the chain seal also had its own consciousness, and it was disgusted by Green Hair Sever and wanted to retaliate? Also, after Green Hair Sever was integrated into his sword scar, what kind of effect would it have on his sword scar? Would his sword scar leave behind any hidden dangers? These were all huge questions, and Gohan needed to think about it carefully. If something went wrong, it would be troublesome. Gohan was still thinking about his own matters when the tent's curtain was lifted, and Song Hama rushed in. Seeing that Gohan was sitting calmly in the tent, Song Hama's anxious face finally relaxed. "Sour Popsicle, where did you go for the whole afternoon? I couldn't find you for the whole afternoon, and I thought you were eaten by U-level Yuan Ko. You almost scared me to death." Song Hama had originally accepted the task of guarding the Luoting mineral vein, but under Gohan's strong persuasion, Song Hama dug in another mineral vein instead of staying with Gohan to complete the task. In the end, halfway through digging, he suddenly received an urgent notice to retreat to the Luoting camp and focus on defense. Song Hama, who was afraid of death, naturally returned to the Luoting camp immediately. This time, he found out that U-level Yuan Ko Medusa, who was confirmed dead a few hundred years ago, appeared in the Luoting mineral vein. Thinking that Gohan was still in the Luoting mineral vein, Song Hama began to frantically search for Gohan in the camp. However, after searching for a long time, he still could not find Gohan. He used his personal terminal to contact Gohan, but no one picked up. Song Hama searched around the Luoting mineral vein a few times, and he decided to leave the Luoting mineral vein to look for Gohan in the number 1 battlefield. In Song Hama's words, Gohan was his brother, and he wanted to see him alive or dead. In the end, before Song Hama could leave the city, he received new news. Medusa had been defeated by the Sword Immortal, and the Miling Mountain Range was safe. This time, Song Hama had no more worries. He was almost the first ancient sword wielder to rush into the Luoting mineral vein. After looking around, he naturally did not find Gohan. Therefore, Song Hama expanded his search area to the entire Miling Mountain Range. He searched until 8 o'clock. Tired and hungry, Song Hama decided to come back to eat something. In the end, he saw Gohan's tent lit up, so he rushed in. "You bastard, where the hell did you go?" Song Hama punched Gohan in the chest. "Have you been turned into stone by Medusa? Why didn't you respond to my call?" "Be gentler, I just came out of the medical pod." Gohan slapped Song Hama's hand. "You guessed it right. I was the first one to encounter Medusa. She turned me into meat paste with one move, and she also turned me into stone. If not for the Sword Immortal who saved my life in time, I would have died. I just came out of the Sword Immortal's medical pod. How could I have had time to respond to your call?" Gohan covered up the matter with half of the truth. Many people knew that he was petrified by the Medusa, so there was no need to hide it. However, he could not tell anyone about Rina Takasaka. F***CK, Sour Popsicle, are you saying that you encountered Medusa and were saved by an immortal sword wielder? Song Hama was stunned when he heard about Gohan's encounter. What kind of person was this brother of his? Both good and bad things had happened to him. "Tell me quickly, what does Medusa look like, Yuan Ko? What does the Sword Immortal look like? Who is his sword mistress?" Song Hama asked about the details of the battle with Medusa, and Gohan told Song Hama everything that he could tell. Song Hama listened with great interest. He felt that it would be perfect if he had a plate of spicy crayfish next to him. "Right, I saw Chun Chongqing panicking just now. I heard that Rina Takasaka from her team has also gone missing. She seems to have chosen the Loading Mine Guardian mission, just like you, and did not return to the camp. Did you see Rina Takasaka there?" Song Hama was worried about his classmate, but he did not know that Rina Takasaka had almost turned Gohan into a cripple. Chapter 276. I saw her. Gohan acted as if nothing had happened. But I only saw her once when I went in. I was petrified by Medusa, so I don't know what happened to her. That was all Guhan said, but he didn't say anything else about Banlina. Guhan didn't plan to let this matter spread. There was no need to create unnecessary trouble. More importantly, he didn't want Song Hama to be involved in this matter. What was more dangerous than Yuan Ko was the open and hidden attacks from his own people. This matter would be shouldered by Guhan alone. If an honest person like Song Hama knew about it, who knew what would happen? Song Hama was someone who could cut down a street for Guhan. Guhan had confirmed this since he was very young. After chatting with Song Hama for a while, Guhan used tiredness as an excuse and sent Song Hama out of the tent. In fact, Guhan was really tired. He went to bed early and lay down beside Qinpin, preparing to sleep. However, just as he closed his eyes, he heard his communicator ring. "You have a call from your good friend, Liuyan Ling. Would you like to accept it?" It was a call from Liuyan Ling. Hearing the name on the other end of the call, Guhan's face stiffened. Then, it began to change colors. It wasn't until the call beeped 5 times that Guhan pressed a button on his personal terminal. "Hello, what's up?" Guhan's tone didn't sound any different from usual. It was still cold and indifferent. Liuyan Ling, who was on the other end of the call, was quite used to it. "Can't I call you if there's nothing?" Liuyan Ling seemed to have heard this sentence often on television. Girls always liked to start with this sentence when they were being unreasonable. Once you heard this sentence, you almost knew that she was going to be unreasonable. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." Guhan's words were blunt, but in fact, everyone could hear the threat and fraud in his words. However, Liuyan Ling did not hear it. "All right, I won't play with you anymore. I heard that something happened in the Miling mountain range, and a U-level Yuan Ko Medusa appeared. Is that true?" Liuyan Ling asked through the communicator. It seemed that she was no longer in Mei Ling. She was still doing a mission with Guhan yesterday afternoon. "That's right, Medusa escaped from the Luoting mineral vein. I was inside, and I was petrified by her. I have to thank your Lunyan clan. Without your Lunyan clan, I would have died in there." Guhan's words contained hidden meaning. "What? You've been petrified by the Medusas?" Guhan could almost see Liuyan Ling's shocked expression through the communicator. "But why are you thanking the Liuyan clan? What has it got to do with us?" "Oh, I'm thanking you for your 5 fleeting techniques. At the crucial moment, your 5 fleeting techniques helped me delay for 0.01 seconds. Without that 0.01 seconds, I would have died." Guhan could not think of anything to do with the Liuyan clan, so he used a ridiculous excuse to fool her. "Idiot, when did you learn to be so glib?" Liuyan Ling did not think too deeply about Guhan's strange words. On the contrary, she felt a little sweet inside. Then, she thought of Guhan's prince seed and asked, "What about the prince seed? What happened to your prince seed?" "I thought about it. The interests of humanity outweigh my own, so I handed it over to Wu Zhongshi. Thanks to his medbay, I survived." Speaking of the medbay, the immortal sword-grade medbay was still in Guhan's dimensional pocket. Until now, Guhan still thought that the medbay belonged to Wu Zhongshi. He did not know that Sword Immortal by Colt Zhu Wudao had played a supporting role. When he realized that Wu Zhongfang didn't want to take back the medical pod, Guhan naturally put the medical pod into his dimensional pocket. The medbay that belonged to Guhan had already been used by Guhan to save Gu Yun. Guhan happened to lack a medbay. That's good. It's good to help Grandpa Hao Tian. Grandpa Hao Tian liked me when I was young and gave me a teddy bear. Unfortunately, I killed it with a sword, Liuyan Ling said quietly. As a girl, Liuyan Ling could kill a cute teddy bear with a sword. There must be some interesting story behind this. Oh right. Where are you now? Didn't we agree to go to the Luoting mineral vein together today? Guhan suddenly raised this question. According to yesterday's plan, Liuyan Ling should also stay with Guhan today. With Liuyan Ling, the eldest daughter of the Lunyan family, around, Wu Zhongshi did not have the guts to do anything to Gohan. However, early this morning, Liuyan Ling left Gohan a message that said, "There's an emergency. Sorry, I'll leave first." Then, she left Mei Ling mountain range, leaving Gohan alone to face Wu Zhongshi. "Sorry, it's a family matter," Liuyan Ling replied. "The family asked me to go. As the next head of the family, I can't refuse." "Alright. That's it. I'm tired. I need to rest now." With that, Gohan hung up the communication directly, leaving Liuyan Ling alone on the other side. "Ling, what are you doing? Did your boyfriend, your good husband, make you angry?" A gentle and elegant young master of an aristocratic family appeared behind Liuyan Ling. Wasn't this Su Tianyuan of the noble scholar family that Gohan had met before? Yes. He just told me to drink more water and rest more. He was very concerned about me, Liuyan Ling said through gritted teeth. Hee Ling, although I also want to rest for a while, we have to go. Uncle Yuan Ming said that there is a meteor stage Yuan Ko's nest nearby. We can't stay here for long. We have to get to Chongyang Mountain before tomorrow evening, Su Tianyuan said. As far as the eye could see, he and Liuyan Ling were surrounded by a dozen or so people. Even further away from these people, there were a dozen or so sword maidens holding long swords observing their surroundings on high alert. It seemed that Liuyan Ling had suddenly left Plum Ridge to rush to Chongyang Mountain with Su Tianyuan. Who knew what had happened at Chongyang Mountain for Liuyan Ling and Su Tianyuan to rush there at full speed? After hanging up, Gohan fell into deep thought again. He was 80% sure that the power behind Takasaka Arena was the Liuyan family. After all, Qinpin was the sword maiden of the Liuyan calendar. No one in the world knew Qinpin better than the Liuyan family. Although he did not know why Qinpin would appear in the sword burial grounds of Yuzhong City, it was obvious that the Liuyan family had something to do with it. However, the conversation just now made him uncertain. If Liuyan Ling wanted to snatch the Qinpin sword from him, she could have done it through Liuyan Ling. He had not been wary of Liuyan Ling for the past few days. Liuyan Ling only needed to launch a sneak attack on him to snatch the Qinpin sword. There was no need to send a meteor stage like Takasaka Arena, Yuan Ko, to do it. That was why Gohan had used words to test Liuyan Ling. If the Liuyan family was really the mastermind, Liuyan Ling's tone and attitude would have changed after such a thing happened. However, Gohan did not notice any change in Liuyan Ling. She was exactly the same as the original Liuyan Ling. Moreover, Gohan's intuition told Gohan that Liuyan Ling did not know any of this. She was sincere to him. Then, who is the mastermind? Gohan scratched his head in frustration. Suddenly, Gohan thought of a possibility. The mastermind was still the Liuyan family, but Liuyan Ling was kept in the dark from beginning to end. She did not know that the Liuyan family was planning to make a move against her. Moreover, because of Liuyan Ling's existence, Takasaka Arena could not make a move with Liuyan Ling around. Thinking of this, it was very suspicious for the Liuyan family to suddenly let Liuyan Ling leave Plum Ridge. It seemed to be to lure Liuyan Ling away so that Takasaka Arena could make a move. The moment Liuyan Ling left, Takasaka Arena made a move. This was the most obvious evidence. Unfortunately, this was all Gohan's guess. Without enough evidence, Gohan could not accurately determine who the mastermind was. He could only feel that the Liuyan family was very likely. Forget it. Time to sleep. Since he could not figure it out, he did not bother thinking about it. Gohan was already very tired. After thinking for a while, Gohan felt like his mental state was about to explode. Gohan shrunk his body back into the quilt and closed his eyes. A milky aroma directly rushed into Gohan's nose. This is Qingpin's scent. And it's the scent of the cute Qingpin. The cute Qingpin and the young Qingpin had both been in Gohan's arms before. There was a clear difference in their body scents. The cute Qingpin's scent was like a sweet milky scent, while the young Qingpin's scent was like a lemon. The two scents were easy to distinguish, so Gohan could tell that Qingpin's scent had returned to its original milky scent. "Are you back, my cute Qingpin?" Gohan took a deep breath and pulled Qingpin into his arms. He kissed Qingpin's forehead and fell into a deep sleep. In his dream, Gohan dreamt of thousands of soldiers and horses, an endless army that stretched all the way to the horizon. These soldiers and horses all wore iron masks on their faces. The war horses were strong, the soldiers were strong, and their weapons shone with a cold light. These soldiers stood there quietly and neatly in formation. That monstrous murderous aura fused together. It was as if the entire world was stunned by this murderous aura. Not even the slightest breeze could be felt. So although these soldiers raised their flags, Gohan could not see what was written on them. Gohan just stood in front of this army, on a towering wall. Behind him was a city. Gohan had to defend this city and live or die with it. That's right, there was also a tiger-like armored sword mistress beside Gohan. Chapter 277. When he woke up the next morning, Gohan had almost forgotten the scene in his dream. What he didn't know was that this scene would appear in front of him a few years later. Of course, these things were not important now. At this time, there were only 3 days left before the week-long internship outside the city ended. Gohan still had 3 accepted tasks in his hands that had not been completed at all. Gohan decided to take the time to complete these tasks as a cover for his next things. The remaining 3 tasks were basically the same task. They required Gohan to patrol certain areas and then kill Yuan Ko, who appeared in those areas to protect the safety of ordinary civilians nearby. It was a very simple task. As long as there was no ghost-level Yuan Ko or above, Gohan was confident that he could kill them. However, when it came to Qingpin, there was a problem. Qingpin, the cute girl, could not wake up no matter how hard Gohan tried. Even if Qingpin squeezed her chubby little face into dough, there was still no sign of Qingpin waking up. Maybe it's because I've consumed too much of my spirit, Gohan guessed. Transformation skills consumed a lot of spirit and physical strength. Perhaps Qingpin could not wake up because she was too tired. Gohan took out a brand new nursery bag from his dimensional pocket and hung it on it. Then, he put Qingpin in it. Fortunately, Gohan had specially prepared a nursery bag for Qingpin in his dimensional pocket. The previous nursery bag was still intact, except for the part with Qingpin's dimensional pocket that was still intact. The rest of the nursery bag had been torn into pieces by the fierce battle and could no longer be used. After leaving the tent, Song Hama was already waiting for Gohan, not far from the entrance with the cast cloud iron. They had agreed yesterday that they would act together to complete the task today. After yesterday's thrilling experience, Gohan no longer wanted to take any risk. He just wanted to spend this internship in peace, and then return home to rest for a while. On the way to the patrol spot, Gohan heard a shocking news from Song Hama's mouth. Rina Kosaka had returned. However, she was not found at the place where Gohan fought her. Instead, she was found in a mine in the depths of the Luoting mine. When she was found, she was already in a deep coma. She only woke up after being treated in the medical bay. However, it seemed that Yuan Ko had injured her brain, causing her to lose some of her memories. It seemed that she had lost all of her memories after leaving the city for the internship. Hearing this news, Gohan understood that the discovered Rina Kosaka was probably the real Rina Kosaka. When she was kidnapped in the hover car, she had been in a coma and locked up somewhere. It was only when the fake Rina Takasaka failed that they placed the real Rina Takasaka deep in the ore vein, pretending that she had fainted from the Medusi's attack. It also perfectly explained why Rina Takasaka had lost her memory. The Medusi's attack must have damaged her brain. That was the perfect excuse. Regarding this, Gohan was very curious. Were the masterminds not afraid that he would reveal the whole process to the Kensei? As long as he told them everything, all of their disguises would be meaningless. Or perhaps they were already certain that he wouldn't reveal this matter? If that was the case, then their understanding of him had reached a terrifying level. They could even guess his style of doing things. The process of completing the mission with Song Hama was very smooth. Although they did meet some stupid Yuan-ko during their patrol, they were all rat tier and tiger tier low-level Yuan-ko. Gohan did not even have to do anything as Song Hama could finish them off. The next 3 days were smooth sailing. It seemed that after the ordeal with Medusa and Rina Kosaka, Gohan's luck had returned to normal. However, in these 3 days Gohan's expression grew uglier. This was because 3 days had passed, but Chinpin was still in a coma. If not for Gohan's passive ability to turn Chinpin into his sword form, Gohan would have thought that his sword maiden had fallen into a long slumber. Gohan searched on the internet for a long time. There were many cases of sword maidens in a long slumber, but there were very few solutions. There was almost only one way: let the sword maiden wake up on her own or seek help from an alchemist. Asking a swordsmith for help was just like how Gohan had healed King Yu, asking a swordsmith to heal the heavily injured King Yu. However, King Yu only sought help from an alchemist when he was almost completely damaged. On the other hand, Popper was only asleep, and he was even snoring. Swordsmiths all used the same method to repair the sword maiden. They would place the sword maiden in the furnace and reforge it. No matter what kind of illness it was, they would follow this method. Unless absolutely necessary, Gohan wouldn't bear to let Popper reforge it in the furnace. Besides, Gohan didn't want others to touch his Popper. 3 days later, when the class gathered again, Chinpin was still sleeping in Gohan's infant pouch. "Students of class 22694, I haven't seen you for a week. I wonder how you've been these days? Have you learned anything about the real world of the sword-bearers?" Luo Fan, the homeroom teacher, walked to the front of the class and started lecturing. This was the first time Gohan saw Luo Fan in a week. "Alright, you guys know better than me when it comes to experience, so I won't say much. I am very sorry to inform everyone that during this week, 2 students from our class 22,694 have left us forever." Although Luo Fan said it was regretful, Gohan didn't hear any real regret in his tone. Obviously, this situation was a norm for Luo Fan. Every time he brought the freshmen out of the city for practical training, such a tragedy would happen. It was also a norm for the whole of Yuzhong University. Otherwise, the 10% death rate for each class was no joke. It was a statistic that was supported and calculated by detailed statistic. Gohan scanned the entire class 22694. Sure enough, there were 2 fewer students in the queue. One was Liuyan Ling, and the other was probably the unlucky one who had died. The moment they heard that someone had died, the whole team was in an uproar. Although most of them had guessed that someone might die in this training, when death really came, everyone felt a great fear in their hearts. This time, the one who died was called Guxiu. Next time, would it be them? Stand still. Sooner or later, all of you will die too. Luo Fan snorted coldly. The whole line calmed down. Student Guxiu, a cute student, bravely went to the ore vein to mine alone. Unfortunately, he encountered the tiger-grade Yuan-ko and died. Luo Fan quietly read out the unfortunate student's name. If he hadn't abandoned his sword maiden and died when Yuan-ko broke through his protective shield while he was running away, I would have praised him. Guxiu, student number 18, likes to play the flute. Gohan silently recalled Guxiu's information. Gohan remembered that when Guxiu introduced himself, he specifically mentioned that he was good at playing the flute and hoped to become a musician in the future. The tiger-grade Yuan-ko is not a strong opponent. Student Guxiu's sword maiden had a chance to kill it as long as student Guxiu commanded his sword maiden seriously. But he didn't care and ran away like a mortal. Such a person, if not him, who will die. Even though Guxiu was already a dead man, Luo Fan still unceremoniously criticized him, and then used his death as an example to teach the other students a lesson. If I die this time, I might just be a typical example of failure in the teacher's mouth. Gohan smiled bitterly. In his heart, he was even more determined to not die. At least, he must not die before achieving his dream. However, there are two students who performed very well. After using Gu Xiu's death to teach the other students a lesson, Luo Fan began to praise them. The Luoting camp specially sent a letter of thanks to our student Gohan for informing the authorities about the appearance of Medusa, giving them enough time to evacuate the humans from the Luoting camp. And Rina Takasaka, she was the one who informed Gohan about the appearance of Medusa before she fainted. Without the efforts of these two students, the number of human casualties in this Medusa incident would not be in the single digit. Alright, I hereby announce that the practical training is over. Everyone will take the hover car back to Yuzhong City. Remember to submit your mission at the Swordsman Mission Center. The Swordsman Mission Center will report back to me on the completion of your mission. If anyone fails to complete their mission, I won't hold back on your credit. Finally, the 1-week practical training was over. When Gohan returned to his seat, he looked a little absent-minded. Gohan would probably never forget what he had experienced that day. Also, why was Qin Pin in his arms still sleeping? Didn't she know that Gohan wanted to feed her meat? Hello, are you Gohan? Just as Gohan was thinking about this, a familiar voice rang in his ears. Gohan looked up and saw Rina Takasaka's familiar face. Gohan almost pulled out his sword and killed her. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. This Rina Takasaka was not a fake, but the real Rina Takasaka. Although I've lost my memory for the past few days, I heard from my friend that you've been taking good care of me. Thank you. Rina Takasaka stretched out one hand in front of Gohan and used the other to tuck her bangs behind her ears. The sunlight shone on her from behind, making her look particularly dazzling. You're welcome. Gohan squeezed Rina Takasaka's hand tightly. You've taken good care of me too. We're even now. Chapter 278. The hover car made its way back to Yuzhong City without a hitch. When they got off the hover car, they arrived at the Sword-Bearer Quest Center. Gohan picked up a few barren dimensional crystals, each worth more than 3,000 quarks of sword element. He and Song Hama handed in their quest. In addition to the other 5 quests, the two of them had a total of 58 hero coins. This was not a lot. Gohan still had to pay 50 hero coins as tax every month. After deducting the 50, he only had 8 hero coins left. Although the Sword-Bearer Quest Center had a place to exchange hero coins, when Gohan saw that he had 50 hero coins left, he didn't want to go there. What could he buy with 50 hero coins? After handing in the mission, the next thing they needed to do was to return to their respective homes. On the way back, Song Hama kept on chattering, while Gohan only responded with a few words. When they were about to reach the entrance of Sanqing Mountain, Gohan raised his head and said to Song Hama, "Toad, I'm going to the Sword-Bearer Quest Center tomorrow." Song Hama said. It was normal for sword-bearers to go to the Sword-Bearer Quest Center, so there was nothing strange about it. Go. What are you talking about? But let me tell you something first. My mom will definitely be worried about me and my 2 cute little siblings. They can talk to me for 2 to 3 hours every night. I've already promised them that I'll take them to the amusement park tomorrow. I don't have the time to accompany you to the Sword-Bearer Service Center to forge for your family's poor family. Song Hama thought that Gohan wanted him to accompany him to the Swordsman Service Center to reforge something for Penniless Priest. Song Hama also knew that Penniless Priest had not woken up for 3 days. No, I'm not going to find a blacksmith. I'm going to Sword Tower, Gohan said. If you want to go to the Sword Pavilion, just go to the Sword Pavilion. Why do you make it sound as if it's a treasure sword? Song Hama suddenly stopped talking and walking. She stood there in a daze for a long while before grabbing Gohan's arm. F***ck, what are you going to do in the Sword Pavilion? Don't tell me that you already have 1,000 corks of sword essence. Yes, it's full. Gohan nodded. This nod made Song Hama fall into a trance. F***ck 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 F***ck. Even a genius like me only has 400 corks of sword essence. You're just a guy with 9 corks of sword essence. What kind of medicine did you take to suddenly have 1,000 corks of sword essence? You're twice as fast as I am. I can't live like this anymore. I was the one who became an ancient sword wielder first. What do you mean you became an ancient sword wielder first? A few black lines appeared on Gohan's forehead. We both became ancient sword wielder on the same day, okay? Song Hama choked and quickly corrected himself. That's because I reached 200 corks of sword essence first. That can't be wrong, right? Yes, you first. Gohan was speechless. However, he could understand Song Hama's feelings. When Song Hama was young and found out that his innate sword essence had stopped growing at 9 corks, Song Hama had told Gohan very seriously that he would protect Gohan in the future. He wanted to be Gohan's protector. Many times, when the young Gohan was bullied by others, it was Song Hama who took the initiative to stand in front of Gohan. Although after Gohan mastered sword techniques, no one could beat Gohan. However, Song Hama really did treat himself as Gohan's protector. Although Gohan later became the military governor and possessed extraordinary strength, Song Hama still felt that he was one step ahead of Gohan in terms of sword essence. After all, Gohan's innate sword essence was too little. This meant that Gohan's innate sword essence could not increase too quickly after Gohan's innate sword essence. But now, Gohan had actually reached 1,000 corks of sword elements before him. This made Song Hama lose his last bit of support as a guardian. Therefore, Song Hama was very unhappy. His entire body was in a bad mood. Forget it, Sour Popsicle, it's a good thing that you have 1,000 corks of sword essence. It's your turn to protect me in the future. Song Hama's personality had many flaws. He was careless, lazy, and lacked perseverance. However, when it came to optimism, he was one of the best. However, you have to tell me how you managed to reach 1,000 corks of sword essence. Song Hama was still somewhat indignant. Don't tell me that you improved it through the battles over the past few days. Your chi pin doesn't even move. The sword essence in the dimensional vortex was absorbed by my chi pin. Where are you going to absorb sword essence? Well, sometimes, Song Hama's intelligence was worth looking forward to. Upon hearing Song Hama's question, Gohan took a deep breath. Toad, I'm only telling you about this. You are not allowed to tell anyone else. Do you understand? F***ck, what's the matter? Why are you so serious, Sour Popsicle? Song Hama scoffed, but he couldn't laugh anymore. This was because Gohan had told Song Hama everything about the sword essence oral fluid without hiding a single word. The reason why Gohan was so honest was because he knew that Song Hama was a trustworthy brother. If Gohan couldn't even trust Song Hama, his life would become extremely tragic. Furthermore, the 8-city sword meet was about to begin. When the time came, the growth of sword essence would be even more terrifying. It was impossible to hide it from someone close to him for a long time. When the time came, it would only sow the seeds of a rift between him and Song Hama. Therefore, Gohan chose to confess about the sword essence oral fluid to Song Hama. After that, Song Hama was completely dumbfounded. He spent a full 20 minutes before he reluctantly believed Gohan's words. His body could convert the sword essence oral fluid to a 100%. Perhaps this is God's compensation to you for being a sour popsicle. Song Hama let out a long sigh. F***ck, if only I was born with 9 corks of sword essence. What the F***ck? Welcome home, master. After opening the door, Wen Meiyun knelt in front of Gohan and helped Gohan take off his shoes. Then, a strong sour smell filled the room. Wen Meiyun, who was kneeling on the ground and facing Gohan's foot, almost fainted from the smell. I've been out for a few days. It's normal. Gohan blushed. Go fill the tub. I'm going to take a shower. You can wash my shoes too. Yes, master. Although the strong smell made Wen Meiyun dizzy, weak in her limbs and nauseous, Wen Meiyun felt a little dizzy. However, Wen Meiyun still maintained a gentle and obedient attitude due to her good manners as a maid. That's why it's good to be a maid. You can still be gentle in this manner. If it's a wife, she would directly scold you. Oh right, a maid only needs you to pay her salary every month. But a wife needs you to write her name on the property ownership certificate. That's why it's good to be a maid. Youngsters, when you have money in the future, you can just find a maid. Why do you need a wife? Wen Meiyun went to prepare a bath for Gohan. Meanwhile, Gohan walked into his bedroom. A week had passed. The little girl who looked exactly like Gu Yun was still lying in the medical pod. No wonder Qinpin saved you. Both of you are idiots who like to sleep. Gohan let out a long sigh. He carried Qinpin out of the baby pouch and placed him beside Gu Yun's medical pod. Then, Gohan sat quietly by the bed and looked at the two people closest to him. He didn't say a word for a long time. Master, the bath is full and the temperature is suitable. Do you want to enter the bath now? Wen Meiyun walked to Gohan and asked. Okay, I'm going to take a bath. Take care of these two people. Gohan instructed and walked directly into the bath. When Gohan entered the bath, Wen Meiyun suddenly realized that Gohan entered the bath empty-handed. He didn't bring a bathrobe or anything like that. In desperation, Wen Meiyun could only take out a bathrobe from Gohan's wardrobe. Then, she opened the door of the bath and placed the bathrobe on the hanger. Master, your bathrobe is here. After reminding Gohan, Wen Meiyun planned to leave quietly. She was afraid that it would be like the last time. Gohan ordered her to scrub his back. In the end, what she was afraid of naturally came true. Wen Meiyun had just put down the bathrobe when she heard Gohan's voice. Don't go. Help me scrub my back. Since the master had given the order, the maid had no right to refuse. Wen Meiyun could only slowly untie her clothes. She only wore a white cotton underwear and walked into the bath. First, she laboriously rubbed the dead skin and dirt on Gohan's back, which were the so-called mud balls. Needless to say, Wen Meiyun really did make a lot of densely packed mud balls. The feeling of happiness and satisfaction in her heart was indescribably exhilarating. Master, turn around. It's time for the front, master? Master? Wen Meiyun finally finished rubbing the back. When she gathered her courage and was ready to rub the front for Gohan, she found that no matter how she shouted, Gohan still didn't turn around. Therefore, Wen Meiyun could only use her strength to turn the heavy Gohan over. Only then did she find that Gohan had closed his eyes, breathed evenly, and entered a dream. It seems that Master is really tired this time. Wen Meiyun sighed. It was the first time she saw Gohan so tired. But, do I still rub the front for Master now? Wen Meiyun hesitated for a long time and finally decided to complete her task. Starting from Gohan's neck, from top to bottom, she completely rubbed it. Even little Gohan was the same. Because she was afraid that the rough bath towel would wake Gohan up, Wen Meiyun could only use her own hands to rub Gohan. Little Gohan was naturally an exception. Wen Meiyun also carefully cleaned the dirt nearby. Little Gohan rubbed a few times in Wen Meiyun's hands, and there was a trend of it growing bigger and bigger. However, it seemed that because Gohan had fallen asleep, the shy Wen Meiyun suddenly became very calm. She didn't avoid little Gohan at all. Instead, she stopped what she was doing for more than 10 seconds and stared at little Gohan in a daze. In the end, that night, a faint mosquito-like sound could be heard from Wen Meiyun's room. Well, it wasn't dirty at all. Chapter 279. When Gohan opened his eyes again, he found himself still lying in the bathroom. The water temperature in the bathtub was still maintained at an appropriate temperature. It could be seen that when Maiden had been controlling the water temperature for Gohan. Gohan stretched and stood up from the bathtub. He wiped off the water droplets, put on a bathrobe, and returned to his bedroom. He found that everything in his bedroom was normal. The medical pod and Ching Pin were lying quietly on his bed. However, the lid of the medical pod had been opened. Wait, the lid of the medical pod was opened? Gohan was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly walked to the side of the medical pod and looked inside. It was empty. There was no one inside. Gu Yun, where's Gu Yun? Gohan was shocked. He turned his bedroom upside down, but he didn't see Gu Yun at all. Then, Gohan rushed out of the bedroom and shouted for Wen Meiyun. Wen Meiyun, where are you? Come out. Master? Master! Meiyun is here. Wen Meiyun ran out of a small bedroom in a panic with a broom in her hand. Looking at her dusty appearance, she should be cleaning. Where's Gu Yun? Where's my sister? Seeing Wen Meiyun's confused face, Gohan remembered that Wen Meiyun didn't know who Gu Yun was, nor did she know who her sister was. It's that little girl. The little girl who has been lying in the medical pod. Where did she go? Did you see her just now? Sorry, Master. Meiyun didn't pay attention. Meiyun has been cleaning in a few small bedrooms, Wen Meiyun replied. Suddenly, a clatter sound came from the kitchen. Gohan reacted instantly and rushed into the kitchen. He found that the entire kitchen was in a mess. All kinds of pots and pans had fallen to the ground. Even Wen Meiyun's half-cooked rice cooker had been thrown down, and all the rice in the cooker had been spilled. Hee-hee-ha! At this time, such a sound came from a small room in the kitchen. It sounded like a child's laughter. What's in that small room? Gohan asked Wen Meiyun. Master, that's a warehouse used to store ingredients, Wen Meiyun quickly replied. That's right, there's also a blue and white fish. I remembered that Master is coming back today, so I spent a lot of money to buy a blue and white fish to nourish Master's body. Fish was also an expensive ingredient in the base cities. Since there was a high demand for space to breed fish, the production of fish had always been small. Naturally, the price of fish had risen. Even the sword-bearers couldn't afford to eat fish every day with their monthly income. Of course, for a sword-bearer like Gohan, it was easy for him to eat fish every day. Ingredients? Blue and white fish? Gohan decisively pushed open the door. The first thing he saw was a large refrigerator, followed by a large glass fishing rod with a live fish and a little girl. Wait, what the hell is a little girl in a fish tank? In the fish tank, a big blue and white fish was swimming forward with all its might, trying to escape for its life. Because behind it, a naughty child was swimming behind it, trying to catch its tail. Although it was only a small fish tank that was less than 1 square meter, the human and the fish fully displayed the tenacity of life, as well as the predator's desire for prey. Speaking of which, this little girl's swimming skills were really ugly, worse than a dog's crawl. Although this big blue and white fish had a strong desire for life and swam very fast, it was a pity. Unfortunately, it was trapped in such a small fish tank and faced a predator that was dozens of times its size. After being forced into a corner, it was helplessly held in the girl's arms. But soon, this little girl was also targeted by a new predator. A big hand grabbed the little girl's neck and then pulled her out of the fish tank, just like how someone pulled Ching Pin's neck. If Ching Pin was pulled out of the fish tank by the neck by Gohan, she would probably try to escape with all her hands and feet. But after Gu Yun was caught, she did not shout or make a fuss. She just hugged her big blue and white fish tightly in her arms. This scene was similar to the fat baby in the New Year painting who had fish every year. Brother, brother, I'll give you fish. Gu Yun, who was caught, closed her eyes and thought for a while. Then, she held up the big blue and white fish tightly. It seemed that she was going to give it to Gohan. Although the fish looked a little tempting, Gohan's attention was not on the fish at all. Gohan asked Gu Yun in a daze, What did you call me? Brother. Gu Yun tilted her head. Aren't you my brother? You still owe me a few hot and sour shredded potatoes. Don't try to deny it. Was this really his sister, Gu Yun? Listening to Gu Yun's words, it seemed that she was Gohan's dead sister, Gu Yun. Although Gohan did not violate his morals and brought Gu Yun back for treatment, completely ignoring the possibility of Gu Yun's parents and relatives, that was only because she looked too similar to his sister, Gu Yun. But that was only because she looked too similar to his younger sister, Gu Yun. Coupled with the fact that his parents' ashes had exploded, Gohan had forcefully brought Gu Yun back. All he wanted was just a little bit of comfort in his heart. In fact, Gohan knew in his heart that this girl could not be his sister, Gu Yun. At most, she looked a little similar. After calming down, Gohan regained his senses. Originally, he planned to send this girl who looked like Gu Yun back to her parents and end this wrong behavior. But he never expected that after this girl who looked like Gu Yun woke up, her first reaction was to call him brother. She even said that he owed her a few hot and sour shredded potatoes. This made Gohan's heart suffer a great impact, and he became a little confused again. Maiden, did you tell her about me? Gohan's first reaction was that when Maiden told this girl about his basic situation. No, Master, Maiden has never told Miss about these things. This is also the first time Maiden has seen Miss awake. When Maiden waved her hand, it didn't seem like she was lying. Smelly brother, you actually suspect me. Xiaoyun doesn't want to be with you anymore. When Gu Yun heard Gohan's words, she immediately pulled a long face. Quickly put me down, I want to eat fish. Eat fish? Gohan subconsciously looked at the big blue and white fish in Gu Yun's arms. Good heavens, Gu Yun had already taken a bite from the fish. How can you eat fish like this? Quickly throw it away. When Gohan saw Gu Yun eat the fish raw, he immediately became anxious. His sister never had the habit of eating raw fish. Therefore, Gohan forcefully took the big blue and white fish from Gu Yun's hands, and then ordered Wen Meiyun to throw this unlucky big blue and white fish back into the kitchen. Give me back my fish, my fish! Seeing that her beloved big blue and white fish was taken away, Gu Yun immediately became irritable and struggled. If it wasn't for the strength of Gohan's arms, she would have really broken free. Don't mess around, I'll let Meiyun cook that fish, you can eat it slowly later. Gohan's face darkened and he scolded. Gu Yun gradually became obedient, sat on the chair at the dining table, and said pitifully, Brother, ask sister-in-law to add more soy sauce. Xiaoyun's taste is a bit stronger. What did you say? Gu Han didn't know why the word sister-in-law popped out of his mouth, but he quickly realized that Gu Yun must have mistaken Wen Meiyun as his wife. That's my maid, not your sister-in-law. Gohan knocked on the table. Let me ask you, are you really my sister, Gu Yun? You're so annoying, brother. Why don't you believe that I'm your sister? Gu Yun pouted. When I was 3 years old, you lied to me and said that if I planted my New Year's money in the ground, it would grow a lot of New Year's money the next day. You cheated me of more than 10 yuan. In the end, you used it to buy cartoons and got beaten by Mom. Don't you remember? This. A few black lines appeared on Gohan's forehead. It seemed that there was indeed such a thing. At that time, it was popular to collect cartoons of the 24 Jendi and the 72 Sword Immortals. In order to collect all of them, he did spend his New Year's money and Gu Yun's New Year's money. If Gu Yun hadn't suddenly mentioned it, Gohan would have almost forgotten about his dark history. Oh, by the way, you and Song Hama used Mom's clothes as a cloak to play the game of Jendi War. In the end, you stepped on a big hole and even bribed me with lollipops, asking me not to tell Mom. Another dark history that Gohan didn't want to mention was revealed by Gu Yun. Oh, by the way, and the more Gu Yun talked, the more addicted she became. When she was about to continue, Gohan knocked on the table hard, and his face was full of sadness. Don't talk about the past. I don't want to recall those memories. Oh, then I won't talk about it. Gu Yun also lowered her head, and seemed to have fallen into a kind of misery. The two of them were silent for a long time, and didn't say a word. They only heard the sound of the big blue flower fish being cooked in the pot in the kitchen. "Do you know that my sister is already dead?" The reason why Gohan was silent was because he was hesitant and conflicted about whether he should ask this question or not. Asking him to personally say that his sister was already dead was undoubtedly a kind of painful torture for Gohan. Is Xiaoyun really dead? Gu Yun's expression was gloomy, so what happened that day was true. Xiaoyun thought that Xiaoyun was just sleeping and had a dream, but it turns out that Xiaoyun is really dead. Then, after some communication, Gohan roughly understood Gu Yun's situation. According to Gu Yun's explanation, Gu Yun had always thought that what happened that day was a dream. When she woke up, she appeared on the road, and then she was taken away by a perverted man who wanted to humiliate her. Then, it was the story of the cute Qing Pin saving the lowly. Gu Yun didn't have any memory of the period from her death until last week. She just kept saying that she was sleeping and didn't know anything. However, Gu Yun still retained the memory before the big attack, and it seemed that she had retained it very clearly. Many of the memories that even Gohan had forgotten, Gu Yun also remembered clearly. Moreover, from the perspective of cognition, expression, and personality, although Gu Yun still retained many of the thoughts and behaviors of a child, in general, her personality state was more like a 16-year-old girl. Not considering death, Gu Yun should indeed be a 16-year-old girl this year. Chapter 280. In the end, Gohan still couldn't confirm whether the Gu Yun in front of him was his sister or not. But faced with Gu Yun's identical face, and Gu Yun's childhood memories that popped up from time to time, Gohan couldn't chase her away. If a loved one who had died suddenly appeared in front of you, and everything was the same as before, then I believe that everyone here wouldn't be able to stop her from living in your life. However, Gohan still maintained a certain degree of vigilance against Gu Yun. When Gu Yun asked to sleep together like before, Gohan decisively rejected her request. He let Gu Yun stay in a small bedroom and specifically told Wen Meiyun to turn on the camera in Gu Yun's room 24 hours a day to monitor every detail of Gu Yun's life. With Rina Takasaka's experience by his side, Gohan couldn't trust any stranger, especially Gu Yun who looked so much like his sister. Maybe she was a spy or an assassin planted by the mastermind behind Rina Takasaka. Gohan had to be careful when dealing with her. While eating, Gohan noticed that Gu Yun was different from before. For example, when Gu Yun was young, she never ate fish, but now, she was addicted to fish. It was even more excessive than Qingpin's love for meat. When Meiyun served the braised blue and white flower fish, Gu Yun monopolized the whole plate. As she ate, she stared at Gohan warily, as if she was afraid that Gohan would snatch her big blue and white flower fish away. Recalling the scene when she jumped into the fish tank to catch the fish and hugged it tightly, Gohan started to have a headache. It seemed that among the girls that his family took in, other than Wen Meiyun who was normal, the rest were all F***king problematic. Xiaoyun, why do you like eating fish so much? I remember when you were young, you would never eat the fish that my mother bought back. Gohan suddenly asked. Brother, when did we eat fish when we were young? Mom even had to calculate for a few minutes to buy a piece of potato. When will our family be able to afford to buy fish? Gu Yun looked at Gohan with disdain. That's right, Gohan had never eaten fish when he was a child. Gohan was just testing Gu Yun's little trick. If Gu Yun was pretending, then in the face of such a sudden question, she would definitely give herself away. Brother, I don't know why either. Ever since I woke up and smelled fish, I couldn't help but want to eat it. I also wonder how I became like this. With that, Gu Yun ate the last mouthful of fish, and then burrowed into Gohan's arms, looking at Gohan with misty eyes. Brother, let's eat fish every day, okay? Whatever. Gohan nodded. He was never picky about what he ate, but it gave Wen Meiyun a shock. She remembered that a big blue and white fish cost tens of thousands. Even if she bought the cheapest fish every day, the 200,000 yuan given by Gohan was still a drop in the bucket. When Maiden couldn't afford this amount of money, so she stammered and wanted to raise the issue of money. In the end, her personal terminal suddenly beeped. She took a look and saw that Gohan had directly transferred 1 million renminbi into her account. When Maiden immediately shut her mouth. She didn't know when her master had become such a nouveau riche. It had only been a few days, and it seemed like a month ago. He was still fussing over her 1 million renminbi. After eating, Gohan went straight back to his bed. Because of his doubts about Gu Yun's true identity, this caused Gohan's original happiness for Gu Yun's resurrection to weaken a lot. Looking at Qingpin, who was still unconscious beside him, Gohan completely lost his happy mood. He held Qingpin's small hand, feeling the non-existent body temperature of Qingpin. "Brother, is this your daughter?" Suddenly, Gu Yun's voice came into his ear. This guy ran to Gohan's bed and saw Gohan holding Qingpin's hand tightly, so he naturally guessed. From this point of view, Gu Yun was still quite pure. If it was someone like Otaku, he would directly ask if this was the little Lolita raised by Gohan's family. "No, this is your brother's sword lady, Qingpin," Gohan replied. "Hey brother, you actually became a sword bearer. That's amazing. Haha, little Yun's brother is a sword bearer." Hearing that her brother was a sword wielder, Gu Yun excitedly jumped up and down on the bed. Seeing this, Gohan felt a bit annoyed, but at the same time, he felt a bit of warmth in his heart. He really hoped that Gu Yun was his little sister. With such a little sister by his side, his life wouldn't be so painful. "But brother, why is your sword lady only a little taller than Gu Yun?" After jumping around for a long time, Gu Yun had a new question. She realized that there was something wrong with Qingpin's height. "Gohan, the sword ladies on TV are all as tall as mother." "I don't know." Gohan was too lazy to answer this question. Also, why is she sleeping all the time? Let her play with Gu Yun, okay? Gu Yun had a new idea. "If you can wake her up, you can do it." Gohan curled his lips. If Gu Yun could wake up Qingpin, it would not be a problem for Gohan to play with her. Gohan would be very happy. Gu Yun, in the historical TV series, if someone is sick, just feed him a round elixir of immortality, Gu Yun said absent-mindedly. Then, she took out a shiny bead from her pocket and stuffed it into Qingpin's mouth. "What did you put into Qingpin's mouth?" Gohan was caught off guard for a moment, and actually allowed Gu Yun to stuff such a strange thing into the poor man's mouth. What if the poor man's stomach got spoiled from eating it? "I don't know, but I think it looks like an elixir of immortality." Gu Yun smiled. Gohan patted his head. Just now, he vaguely glanced at the so-called elixir, and it looked very familiar. "Good Lord, isn't that my remaining dimensional crystal stone?" Looking at the color, it's a baron. Oh my god, how did Gu Yun stuff that thing into Qingpin's mouth? Gohan quickly opened Qingpin's mouth, but it was too late. The dimensional crystal stone was no longer in his mouth. It was probably eaten by Qingpin. "Little Yun, where did you get that stone from?" Gohan's face was cold. "I took it from brother's pocket." Gu Yun pointed to the dimensional pocket on the table. "She can open my dimensional pocket." Gohan was really shocked this time. The dimensional pocket was bound to his bloodline. Other than him, even a sword wielder at the fairy sword tier could not force it open. Otherwise, the space in the dimensional pocket would most likely shatter, and the items inside would be lost into the dimensional gap. Otherwise, Wuzhang Shifang would not have asked him. He could have just snatched the dimensional pocket and opened it. There was only one way to open someone else's dimensional pocket, and that was if the person who opened it had a certain blood relationship with the owner. It was not certain that it could be opened, but there was a certain chance that it could be opened. The closer the blood relationship, the better. For example, The parents and children of the sword wielder had about a 50% chance of opening the dimensional pocket of the sword wielder. As for biological brothers and sisters, there was a 25% chance that they were more than 3 generations of direct blood relative. Then, this chance was infinitely close to 0. If Gu Yun could open his own dimensional pocket, didn't that mean that Gu Yun and he were really related by blood? Gohan suddenly felt that he had become a lot dumber after coming back from Plum Ridge. If he wanted to know if Gu Yun was his sister, it was easy. He just had to do a blood test. Things at the genetic level could not be faked. Gohan decided that he would bring Gu Yun to do a paternity test with him tomorrow. Oh no, a biological brother and sister test. If he could prove that he was related by blood, then even if Gu Yun was a spy or an assassin, Gohan would accept it. Just as he was thinking about these things, suddenly, Gohan heard Chinpin murmur, "Smelly Gohan, Chinpin wants to eat meat." Chinpin spoke. Gohan was overjoyed. Ever since he fell into a deep slumber, he had not said a single word. Who would have thought that at this moment, he would suddenly speak? Could it be that this was a sign that he was about to awaken? Gohan waited for a long time, but Chinpin only said that one sentence in his sleep. There was no other movement. Could it be the effect of that dimensional crystal just now? Gohan suddenly thought of the dimensional crystal that Gu Yun had shoved into Chinpin's mouth. "Little Yun, do you have any more of those stones?" "It's not a stone. It's a pill." Gu Yun pouted her lips and pulled out 3 more barons. "Cheapskate, Gu Yun only took out 3. I'll give them back to you, cheapskate. I'll give you something better later." Gohan patted Gu Yun's forehead and took the 3 barons from her hands. Then, he put them into Chinpin's mouth. Sure enough, after eating these dimensional crystals, poor Ching's complexion clearly improved a lot. He could even move his fingers and toes a little. I understand. Chinpin's transformation consumes a lot of her energy. She needs a dimensional crystal with sword elements to replenish her energy. Gohan, you are so smart. How could you not think of such a simple thing? Gohan immediately took the dimensional bag and fed all the Viscount and Baron species. Although she looked better, Chinpin still showed no signs of waking up. Continue. Gohan was not stingy. He put the Earl species into Chinpin's mouth one by one. When all the Marquise species were used up, Chinpin was still not awake. She could roll around, squirm, and talk in her sleep. Continue. Gohan brought out the rest of the Marquise seeds. When the first Marquise seed entered his stomach, Ching Popper jumped out of bed. "Stupid Gohan. Chinpin wants to eat meat. Chinpin doesn't want to eat stones." Chapter 281. Chinpin finally woke up. Regardless of whether the answer was the reason, Gohan had guessed that Chinpin had insufficient sword essence in her body. Chinpin's cute body could not be judged by the standard of a sword mistress. To Gohan's relief, Chinpin's personality returned to being cute after waking up. Gohan had intentionally asked Chinpin about the young girl Chinpin, but Chinpin had blinked her cute eyes, indicating that she did not know anything. She said that she completely forgot what happened after she tried to shatter the sword that day. When she woke up, she saw Gohan staring at her with an infatuated look. It was disgusting. All in all, because of Chinpin's awakening, Gohan became happy. Until the next morning, he still had a rare smile on his face. This made Gu Yun, who was next to Gohan, stare at Gohan strangely, as if to say that this Lulakan was not her biological brother. All in all, it was a happy day. Gohan took Gu Yun to the Sword Bearers Service Center's medical center, intending to give Gu Yun a blood test. However, there was a problem. Gu Yun did not have a personal terminal, which was like a modern person without an identity card. It was impossible to get a blood test for Gu Yun through the proper channels. Even if Gohan was a sword bearer, the medical center would not care about Gohan at all. They received a sea of sword bearers every year. Who the hell would care about an ancient sword bearer like Gohan? They would have to wait until Gohan became a famed sword-bearer. Therefore, Gohan had to go through some unorthodox or backdoor means. He had to secretly get a blood test for Gu Yun through a doctor he was familiar with. Gohan calculated for a moment. In the entire Yuzhong city, there was only one doctor that Gohan could say he was familiar with, and that was Song Yifei, the genius doctor who had formed a miraculous relationship with Gohan from the beginning of the 100 quarks of sword element test. He had also helped him hide the fact that he had 1,119 quarks of sword element. When Gohan brought Gu Yun to the examination room, Gohan asked her apologetically, "Xiao Yun, can you understand me?" Gu Yun must be very sad to have to do a blood test with Gu Yun, who had always thought that he was her good brother. "Of course, it's no big deal. Do you think I'll be happy if I live with you all day?" Unexpectedly, Gu Yun was very open-minded. She said word by word, "As long as I can be with Big Brother and prove that I'm really Big Brother's little sister, no matter what I do, I'll be very happy." Okay. Gohan suddenly felt that, in terms of character, Gu Yun was somewhat similar to him. They were both very rational. However, on the contrary, he was going further and further down the road of sensibility. The decisive Gohan from a month ago was already half gone. When Gohan carried Gu Yun to Song Yifei's examination room, this unlucky girl was openly lying on the patient's bed, sleeping soundly. TSK, this was a serious violation of discipline. Once discovered, her salary would be deducted. "I'll go wake her up." Gu Yun was bored. After finding Song Yifei sleeping, she immediately jumped out of Gohan's arms and onto Song Yifei's bed. Then, she pinched Song Yifei's nose. "Damn it, this is another fellow who is as worrisome as the poor." Gohan smiled bitterly and immediately carried Gu Yun off Song Yifei's bed. However, it was too late. Song Yifei, who was sleeping soundly, had already opened his hazy eyes. "Who is it? Are you off work?" Song Yifei thought that his colleague was teasing him. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw that it was Gohan, whom he had not seen for a long time. Blushing, he immediately got up from the bed and tidied up his clothes. "Why are you here? Why are you here? There's something I need your help with." Gohan knocked on Gu Yun's head. "I'm sorry, my sister is a little too lively and woke you up." It's okay. I shouldn't have slept. I've been too free these days." Song Yifei explained the reason why he was sleeping. Then, he said a few polite words to Gohan and asked, "What do you need me to help you with? Don't tell me you want me to test your sword element again?" "No." Gohan shook his head. "The reason I came to you today is to ask you to help me conduct a blood test with her." "What? You want to do a blood test?" Song Yifei was shocked. She did not expect that Gohan was looking for her to do a blood test. "Didn't you say that this little girl is your sister? Why do you want to do a blood test?" Sigh. Gohan began to recite the lines that he had rehearsed with Gu Yun. "My sister disappeared 2 years ago. A few days ago, I suddenly found this girl who looks very similar to my sister. However, 2 years have passed, and her appearance has changed. So, I want to do a blood test to confirm it." "I see. I didn't expect this little girl to be so pitiful." Song Yifei sighed. "Go to the front desk and register. Come back to me after you've registered. Can you help me test it in private?" Gohan's face looked even more miserable. "You don't know this, but when I found my sister, her personal terminal had already disappeared. Without a personal terminal, you can't register. It'll be too troublesome if you make it up. Not only will you have to go through all kinds of checks, but you'll also have to wait for a few months. So, I hope to confirm this news as soon as possible. Personal terminal is missing." Song Yifei grabbed one of Gu Yun's hands and pinched near her wrist. Indeed, there was no hard feeling, and the personal terminal in Gu Yun's body had disappeared. "Hey, brother, what you want me to do is illegal. If I get caught, I'll be in big trouble." No, I can't do this." Song Yifei waved her hands. She felt that she was not close enough to Gohan to help him do something that violated the rules. This situation was already within Gohan's expectations, and he had a way to persuade Song Yifei. However, before Gohan said anything, Gu Yun walked to Song Yifei's side and pulled her sleeve. "Sister, I'm begging you, please help Xiao Yun." With that, Gu Yun squeezed out a few drops of sincere tears from her eyes. Song Yifei, who was already soft-hearted, was at a loss. "Sister, you don't know. He's your beloved and respected brother. But because of this, he still doubts my identity. Although brother still treats Xiao Yun very well, Xiao Yun can't survive in this life full of doubts and estrangement. If this continues for a few more months, Xiao Yun will really go crazy. Sister, can you understand the feeling of being doubted by your family all the time? It feels like the whole world is doubting you. Sister, Xiao Yun really can't take it anymore. Do a good deed and help Xiao Yun. Let brother know if Xiao Yun is really his sister. Good sister, Xiao Yun will really go crazy these days." Song Yifei didn't know if Gu Yun was telling the truth, but Gu Yun's heartfelt and touching words had completely moved Song Yifei. She glared at Gohan fiercely, as if blaming Gohan for being so cruel to his sister. Then, she hugged Gu Yun and comforted her. "Good sister, I promise you, I'll do the identification for you now." When Gohan hugged Gu Yun, the little girl secretly stuck out 2 fingers and put on a victorious posture to ask for credit from Gohan. "Is this Gu Yun really a 4-year-old girl who has slept with me for 12 years? Gohan shuddered at Gu Yun's performance. It didn't look like the acting skills of a 4-year-old girl. She was clearly a 16-year-old fox. Here's the result. Don't doubt your sister anymore. She is your biological sister. I've never seen a brother like you." Song Yifei threw the report in front of Gohan. You're right. Gohan read it carefully and let out a long sigh of relief. Although he didn't understand all the data on the report, Gohan could still understand the final conclusion. It clearly said, testing human A is Gohan, testing human B is Gu Yun. Based on the analysis of 24 different genetic loci, the probability of testing human A and B being biological siblings is greater than 99. 99,999,999%. After reading the report, Gohan could finally confirm that Gu Yun was his biological sister. However, how Gu Yun was resurrected was indeed a worldwide puzzle. Gohan couldn't figure it out at all. "Thank you, Yifei." Gohan bowed to Song Yifei to express his gratitude. Treat your sister well in the future. Don't let me know that you treat your sister badly. Also, remember to get a new terminal for Gu Yun as soon as possible. Otherwise, Gu Yun won't be able to do anything in the future. She can just stay at home, Song Yifei said nonstop. "I will." Although Gohan said that he would, it was actually very difficult to get a new terminal for Gu Yun. According to the official records, Gu Yun had been dead for 12 years. Suddenly, she had to be given the identity of his sister. It would be strange if the officials did the formalities for this kind of thing. It might cause a lot of trouble. Therefore, Gohan was a little reluctant to give Gu Yun a personal terminal. "By the way, can I leave Gu Yun with you? I have to go to the Sword Garret later. I can't take care of her." "Why are you going to the Sword Garret?" Song Yifei was stunned for a moment. He immediately remembered that this guy's sword element had broken through 1,000 quarks more than a week ago. "You are going to synchronize the Sword Lady of the Sword?" "Yes." Gohan nodded. "Then you don't have to go. The Sword Garret has been closed for a week. I heard that it will only reopen tomorrow morning at the earliest." Song Yifei spread his hands. "Otherwise, why do you think I am so free here? It has been closed for a week." "Why?" Gohan was shocked. The Sword Garret had been closed for more than a decade. "I will tell you in secret. Don't tell anyone." Song Yifei looked around vigilantly. The wielder of the Yuchang sword, formless sword, died in battle. His ancient sword lady and famous sword lady have returned to the sword garret. Only the Yuchang sword, ranked second in the treasure sword record, has not returned. The people of the sword garret are going crazy trying to find her. Chapter 282. Nanfei's sword's name was Bai Qi in Yuzhang City. It could be said that he was not a big or small celebrity. This could be seen from the fact that he was able to obtain an official title at the famous sword level. Unless he had established a special merit, the sword committee would only give him a title after he reached the spirit sword level. There had always been some dissatisfaction with the Nanfei's sword's name, Bai Qi, because many people thought that his achievements and merits were only above average and did not deserve this title. There were hundreds of famous sword-level sword-bearers whose contributions were ahead of his, but none of them were recognized by the sword committee. Why could Bai Qi get this title? Most of the sword-bearers agreed that the reason why Bai Qi could get this title was because of his Yuchang sword. This was because the Yuchang sword was extremely popular in Yuzhang City. It was loved by countless people and was known as the mascot of Yuzhang City. Once someone synchronized the Yuchang sword, they would become the most attention-grabbing person in the entire city. Since ancient times, more than a dozen Yuchang sword-bearers had been like this. There were many reasons why Yuchang sword could have such a status in Yuzhang City. The most important reason was that Yuchang sword was the sword maiden of Kanzu's fleeting time calendar. In all the legends about Kanzu, there were traces of Yuchang sword. All the sword maidens used by Kanzu in the past had a feeling similar to sacred objects. It was like telling everyone that this spittoon was used by Jesus Christ. It was guaranteed that a lot of people would immediately kneel down in front of this spittoon to kiss and lick it, trying to taste God. It was a bit disgusting. Most of the sword maidens used by Kanzu were stored in the sword pavilion in Yanjing City. Only 2 sword maidens were left outside. One of them, the Yuchang sword, was left in the sword pavilion in Yuzhang City. It was said that on the 80th birthday of Zhetian Jiandi, the founder of Yuzhang City, the Liunian family and Yanjing City gave it to Zhetian Jiandi as a congratulatory gift. This was the consensus view of the people of Yuzhang City. The people of Yanjing City strongly opposed this, claiming that Yuzhang City stole it. The 2 cities fought over the ownership of Yuchang sword. In addition, Yuchang sword had made great contributions during several crises in Yuzhang City, so Yuchang sword became the mascot of Yuzhang City. Every year, it won the first place in the Sword Maiden contest, which was the favorite of the people of Yuzhang City. It was no wonder that after Bai Qi's Yuchang sword was successfully synchronized, it immediately attracted the attention of the people of Yuzhang City. It appeared on all the major news programs, guest interviews, Art Life, The Voice of Yuzhang, and so on. It became a big star in Yuzhang City. But now, this famous sword wielder was dead. It didn't matter how he died. People didn't care about how he died. But when the people of the sword pavilion found that Yuchang's sword didn't return to the sword pavilion after Bai Qi's death, something big happened. Bai Qi's other 2 sword maidens, the ancient sword and the famous sword, returned to the sword pavilion. Only the Yuchang sword was completely missing. According to Song Yifei, all the staff of the sword garret and the sword bearers of Yuzhang City were frantically looking for the Yuchang sword. They even closed the sword garret for a week, which was rare. Unfortunately, no one knew why Bai Qi went out of the city this time. Naturally, they didn't know where Bai Qi died. After a week of searching, they didn't even find a trace of Yuchang's sword. Closing the sword pavilion for a week was the limit. If they didn't open it again, the sword bearers would probably tear the roof of the sword pavilion apart. Hearing such news from Song Yifei, Guhan felt more or less helpless. But compared to confirming that Gu Yun was his sister, this helplessness was nothing. But today Guhan's trip was not in vain. He went to the front desk to apply for synchronization, and then asked Song Yifei to do a sword element test. After getting approval for synchronization, he left the sword-bearer's service center. In this way, when the sword pavilion opened the next day, Gohan could enter the sword pavilion early and didn't have to spend time on all kinds of procedures. At about 8 o'clock the next day, Gohan came to the sword-bearer's service center, almost at the time when the sword pavilion opened. But probably because the sword pavilion was closed for a week, there were dozens of sword-bearers waiting in line at the entrance of the sword pavilion to enter the sword pavilion even though it was so early. They probably started to line up at 5 or 6 o'clock. If they waited in line, Gohan estimated that he could enter the sword pavilion at noon, which made Gohan very annoyed. "Hey Gohan, you're so early." After waiting for 2 hours in silence, someone suddenly called out to Gohan. He turned his head and found that it was Song Yifei. Different from the Song Yifei in the white coat, today Song Yifei was wearing a pink lace dress. Song Yifei was actually a very beautiful girl. Oh no, Song Yifei was almost 28 years old, so it was not appropriate to call her a girl. Hello. After all, Song Yifei had helped Gohan a lot, so Gohan couldn't give her a cold face, so he gave her a stiff smile. "Hey, Comrade Gohan, you don't look well and your eyes are swollen. Didn't you sleep well last night?" Song Yifei asked with concern. "Haha. I had insomnia." Gohan continued to smile awkwardly. Of course, Gohan didn't have insomnia. He had never had insomnia in his life except for a whole year 12 years ago. But Gohan really didn't sleep well last night, because Chinpin and Guyun fought on Gohan's bed. The two were very good friends at first, and they even watched cartoons together. But when it was lunchtime, the conflict inexplicably broke out. Because Guyun repeatedly emphasized that she liked to eat fish, and Gohan gave Wen Meiyun enough RMB, Wen Meiyun bought more than a dozen big blue and white fishes. In Wen Meiyun's eyes, fish was also meat. Chinpin was such a cute guy who liked to eat meat, so he definitely wouldn't reject fish. So this time, Wen Meiyun didn't prepare pork dishes such as braised pork or dongpa pork. Instead, she simply sat on the table and ate an all-fish feast. For such a situation, Guyun naturally clapped her hands happily and wolfed down the food. But Chinpin wasn't happy. After eating a few mouthfuls of fish in front of her, he threw his chopsticks and jumped on Gohan's body. He acted like a spoiled child, saying that fish was the worst. Chinpin didn't want to eat fish, and Chinpin wanted to eat pork. Gohan had just been saved by Chinpin, so he naturally went along with Chinpin. Chinpin was good in every way. More importantly, pork was much cheaper than fish. It was a good thing that Chinpin liked to eat pork. Saving money. So Gohan comforted Chinpin with a few words and belittled fish. Then, Guyun became unhappy and directly quarreled with Chinpin. The two friends who were playing amicably just a moment ago began to fight on the spot. Guyun also jumped into Gohan's arms and used Gohan's arms as a battlefield. She started a debate with Chinpin about which meat was better, pork or fish. Chinpin, a creature who lived by acting cute, was no match for Guyun at all. He didn't know where Guyun learned how to debate with a sharp tongue. The entire debate was controlled by her mouth, and Chinpin was at a disadvantage. The adorable Chinpin was rendered speechless by Guyun's machine-gun-like lines. He retreated step by step. In the end, he could only bury himself in Gohan's arms and complain to Gohan about Guyun's various crimes. Faced with this situation, Gohan decisively decided to lock himself in the training room. The reason was very noble. All the meridians in his body had been destroyed, and he needed to cultivate all over again to open up his meridians. In the end, Gohan cultivated until almost 12 o'clock in the evening. Gohan was pleasantly surprised to find that the speed of cultivation was much faster than he had imagined. In the past, it would have taken him half a month or even 2 or 3 months to open up a meridian. Now, it only took him less than 2 hours to open up all the meridians. This was something that Gohan could not understand. Even if he already had the experience of cultivation, the meridians were still brand new meridians. They were filled with all kinds of obstacles and obscure areas. He needed to slowly carve them out bit by bit, as if he was a lazy worker. But now, once Gohan's sword essence arrived, these meridians were naturally opened up without any obstacles. After a few repetitions, the meridians returned to the standard before the reconstruction. It was as if Gohan hadn't been injured at all. Gohan didn't have any good explanation for this, but there was no doubt that this was a good thing. The 9 swords of mysterious heaven, that he had estimated would take 1 or 2 years to return, would probably only need half a month to completely recover. This was really a good thing. Faced with such a good thing, Gohan naturally continued to cultivate in one go. When his stomach was growling from hunger, he had no choice but to come out of the training room. Only then did he realize that it was already 12 o'clock in the evening. Then, he conveniently discovered that his house was already in a mess. He didn't know how intense the fight between Gu Yun and Qing Pin was. In short, when Maiden would need at least a day to clean up the entire house and return it to its original state. This didn't include the time to buy the various furniture and decorations that had been damaged by the two of them. At this time, Gohan realized that he couldn't let the two of them continue to fight, or his house would be torn down. So, Gohan pressed Gu Yun and Qing Pin on his bed, one on each side, and Gohan lay in the middle. He planned to use his dignity to force the two of them to sleep quietly. Otherwise, the two of them would fight in the house until dawn the next day. Of course, the ending was tragic. Gohan completely discovered that he had no dignity at all in front of Gu Yun and Qing Pin. Although the two of them didn't fight all over the house, they fought one battle after another with Gohan's chest as the battlefield. It wasn't until about 6 o'clock the next morning that the two of them were completely exhausted and fell asleep together. Gu Yun and Qing Pin didn't care. They could sleep as long as they wanted, but Gohan was miserable. He had to go to the sword pavilion at 8 o'clock, so he slept for less than an hour. This was also the reason why Song Yifei noticed Gohan's dark circles. Chapter 283. Miss Yifei, why are you here? Shouldn't you be at work now? Gohan glanced at Song Yifei, who was dressed up nicely. Not only was she not at work, she was not even wearing a white coat. I took the day off today. Song Yifei rolled her eyes at Gohan. As for why I'm here, it's because my sword element is already at 1,950 quarks. I'm here for synchronization. Is that so? Congratulations. Gohan did not expect Song Yifei to be here for synchronization as well. This child was too pitiful. She already had 1,950 quarks of sword element. Who knew how many synchronization experiments she had done, but she still had not become an ancient sword wielder. Song Yifei was a genius model girl with 1,700 plus innate sword element. But I seem to have woken up late today. Aren't there a little too many people today? Song Yifei rubbed her head in embarrassment. I can't help it. Once I thought about it being my day off today, I couldn't help but stay in bed. Song Yifei was indeed late. At this moment, there were less than 15 people in front of Gohan, while those behind Gohan had already made a turn. It was estimated that there were at least 50 people. If Song Yifei had to wait at the end of the line, she would have to wait until the afternoon before it would be her turn. You stand here. Gohan took a step back and vacated a spot in front of him. Song Yifei. Don't get me wrong. Gohan was not trying to please Song Yifei. He just wanted to return her a favor. This is not good. Seeing the spot that Gohan vacated, Song Yifei was a little hesitant. This was blatantly cutting the line. She would be scolded. Up to you. If you want to wait until the afternoon. Gohan's words made Song Yifei lose her sense of shame. She lowered her head and scurried in front of Gohan, cutting the line. The people at the end of the line might not have seen Song Yifei's actions, but the people behind Gohan saw it clearly. They were instantly indignant. F***ck, do you have any manners? What right do you have to cut the line? You're such a coward. That person immediately started scolding. Motherf asterisk cur yen percent at and asterisk. Come out, I'll beat you to death. This person brandished his fists, ready to fight. Young man, don't be too arrogant. Ask your girlfriend to go back. You have to queue up if you're late. Didn't your mother teach you the traditional virtues of the Chinese people? This guy's words are kind of harmonious, but the word girlfriend is confirmed. Song Yifei blushed and lowered her head. She pulled Gohan's sleeve and whispered, Gohan, maybe I should go to the back of the line. No need. Gohan patted Song Yifei's hand and said expressionlessly to the people who were cheering the loudest, 10,000 yuan per person. 10,000 per person? What do you mean? These people looked at each other. For a moment, they didn't understand what Gohan meant. 10,000 yuan per person. I'll buy it for you to shut up, Gohan coldly added. When these people heard that they could earn 10,000 for free, they immediately shut their mouth. They did not say anything else and all revealed bright smiles. Don't think that these people are greedy. If someone offered you 10,000 yuan to buy a spot to jump the queue when you were in the queue, you would also give way. Not to mention 10,000 yuan, even if it was 100 yuan, you would still give way. Who the F*** CK wouldn't want money? Of course, it was also because these people were not sword holders, at least not now. They were just civilians waiting to be coordinated, and they were still very short of money. If they were all sword bearers, they wouldn't have given in just for $10,000. On the contrary, they would have thrown $100,000 at Gohan's head and told him to scram. This was a matter of face, and if it got out of hand, it could cost someone's life. Hey, do you have to be so rich? It's 10,000 yuan. Song Yifei's eyes sparkled. Her monthly salary was only 3,000 yuan, which was really too rich. You like it? Then I'll give you 10,000 yuan too, Gohan suddenly said. Faced with such a temptation, Song Yifei struggled a few times, but in the end, she shook her head and declined Gohan's 10,000 yuan. It was not that she was trying to save face, but she felt that if she accepted the 10,000 yuan, her relationship with Gohan would become that of a soul exchange of benefits. After this, Gohan and Song Yifei entered a period of relative silence. Song Yifei was afraid that if she talked too much with Gohan, the people behind her would really think that she was Gohan's girlfriend. On the other hand, Gohan was silent because he did not want to talk to Song Yifei at all. After waiting in line quietly for a while, it was finally Song Yifei's turn in front of Gohan. The staff in charge of registration at the door was probably familiar with Song Yifei. When they saw her, they immediately teased her. Hey, isn't this our Princess Yifei? Have you reached 1,950 quarks so quickly? These people were so familiar with Song Yifei that they knew exactly how many sword elements Song Yifei synchronized with every time she came. Pfft, I don't want to talk to you. You always make me angry. Song Yifei rolled her eyes at the staff in charge of registration, then leaned over to the staff and whispered in his ear, Well, did you find Lady Yuchang? Don't mention it. Hearing this question, the staff looked like he had eaten **T. We found Baichi's body. I'll tell you in secret, but don't tell anyone else. We're so embarrassed this time. The staff looked around vigilantly, then whispered to Song Yifei, At first, we thought Baichi died outside, but we found out that he died in Yuzhong City, in a brothel, and died immediately. I didn't expect him to be such a person. He said on TV that he only loved his wife, but he turned out to be such a person. That's not right. If he died in Yuzhong City, it's even more impossible for Lady Yuchang to be lost. Song Yifei was puzzled. If Baichi died immediately, then he was not attacked by Yuan Ko, and naturally, Yuan Ko would not have stopped Lady Yuchang from returning to the sword garret. Song Yifei had always guessed that Baichi met the powerful Yuan Ko and died in battle, causing Lady Yuchang to be stopped by Yuan Ko, or simply broken into pieces. That was why she could not come back. That's why our master was so angry. He was still cursing people this morning, cursing all of Baichi's ancestors. However, we suspect that someone might have secretly killed Baichi. Because Baichi's personal terminal disappeared, and because personal terminals record everything before the owner died, the murderer took away his personal terminal to avoid exposing his identity. We are investigating the sword bearers who had conflicts with Baichi. According to preliminary statistics, there are hundreds of people, and we are investigating them one by one. The staff explained everything, then stamped a stamp on Song Yifei's application form and let him in. These two people thought that they were whispering, and no one could hear them clearly, but they did not know that Gohan heard them. Those who practiced martial arts had extremely good hearing, and with the help of the Sword Maiden, it was even more so. Even if they lowered their voices by 5 times, Gohan would still be able to hear them clearly. Unexpectedly, the Yuchang sword seemed to be involved in such a mystery. If Gohan was involved, he might be able to make a guest appearance and write a story called Detective Gohan. Well, of course that was impossible. Gohan was absolutely not interested in these troublesome things. Next, when a person with a gloomy face, who probably had failed synchronization, walked out of the sword garret, the staff shouted and saw the application form handed over by Gohan. Oh, it's an ancient sword bearer. The staff was shocked, and his attitude toward Gohan changed from casual to respectful. After all, he was just an ordinary person. Although he worked in the sword garret, the most important department of the sword bearers' service center, he was still an ordinary person. Facing a sword bearer, he had to be respectful. "Sir, why are you waiting in line?" The staff stamped the application form and asked confusedly. "You are an ancient sword bearer, so you can go in directly. There is no need to wait in line." According to the sword garret's rules, sword bearers who were ancient sword bearers or above could directly enter the sword garret without waiting in line if they wanted to increase their level and coordinate with the sword lady again. However, Gohan could not be blamed. Many new sword bearers did not know about this. Like Gohan, they had waited in line for a long time before they knew they had this privilege. "Oh, I'll remember it next time." There was no expression on Gohan's face, which made the staff members who were expecting to see Gohan's constipated expression very disappointed. They did not have much entertainment when they were working, but when they saw the new swordsman's constipated expression after knowing that he did not have to queue up, they got some wicked pleasure. "Sir Gohan, the sword inscription ceremony for ancient sword bearers is in the small room on the left of the sword garret. Do not go the wrong way." "Thank you." Gohan walked into the sword garret, and saw Song Yifei receiving the potion of the medicinal sword on the altar where Gohan had once been. Gohan suddenly remembered that he had seen Liunian Ling receiving the potion of the medicinal sword. It had been so many days, and he wondered how Liunian Ling was doing. "Young Master, Miss Liunian, we can confirm that the target is in this mountain." Fleeting Time Ling and Su Tianyuan stood side by side on a large, barren rock. Opposite them was an old swordsman who was reporting the latest news. "Our sword ladies have activated Heaven's perception, and we can confirm that there is a strong but weak reaction of sword essence within the mountain. We can confirm that the target is about to awaken." Chapter 284. The ancient sword inscription ceremony was actually similar to the mortal sword inscription ceremony. The biggest difference was probably the materials used in the ancient sword inscription ceremony. Gohan could feel the medicinal power of the ancient sword inscription ceremony, which was much stronger than the last time, entering his body and increasing his abilities. After the ceremony, Gohan went straight to the second floor of the sword tower from the entrance reserved for ancient sword bearers. The first floor was filled with ancient sword maidens, while the second floor was filled with treasured sword maidens. "Welcome, Lord Gohan. Please follow me." A guide with a formal smile led Gohan to the second floor. Although they had thick makeup on, it could be seen that even the heavy makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under their eyes. Their smiles couldn't be any more forced. It seemed like this lady hadn't been sleeping well for the past few days. Yuzhong City's sword tower has a total of 358 natural sword maidens and 1698 artificial sword maidens. Among them, 187 natural sword maidens have already been sent away. The remaining 171 natural sword maidens are still in the sword tower, waiting for their sword bearers. The guide introduced the basic situation of the sword tower's second floor in a formal manner. As far as Gohan knew, there were a total of 3,216 natural sword maidens. Including artificial sword maidens, Yuzhong City had only collected 2,056. There were more than 1,000 that weren't here. He didn't know if it was because there weren't any artificial replicas, or because Yanjing City was so stingy that they didn't provide templates. Without templates, even the best swordsmiths couldn't replicate the artificial sword maidens. From this, it could be seen how much conflict there was between Yanjing City and Yuzhong City. Although our Yuzhong Sword Tower only ranks third among the 8 base cities in terms of the number of natural sword ladies, we have 3 natural sword ladies who are ranked in the top 3 of the natural sword ladies. This is something that even Yanjing City is jealous of. At this point, the guide began to feel proud. Obviously, she felt deeply honored that her city's sword tower was superior to Yanjing City's. The entire Yuzhong City was almost like this. As long as they could surpass Yanjing City, even by a small margin, the people of Yuzhong City would feel honored and honored. It was like hearing that a certain industry or a certain technology in China surpassed America 1,000 years ago. It was almost the same thing. But to be honest, it was indeed a unique feat to gather all the top 3 sword ladies in one sword pavilion. Not even the Yanjing base city, which was rich and powerful, could achieve such a feat. The 3 natural sword maidens that the guide mentioned were the number 1 sword maidens, Heaven Reliant Sword, number 2 sword maidens, and number 3 sword maidens, Tianwen Sword. Tianwen Sword had already been taken away by Liunyinling, and the Yuchang Sword had gone missing. The only sword left in the sword tower was the number 1 sword, Heaven Reliant Sword. Lord Gohan, what you're looking at now is a sword maiden of the treasure grade, the Mountain Suppression Sword. He led the girl to a counter where a sword maiden was kept. He pointed at a heavy sword in a brocade box and said, "The Mountain Suppression Sword is ranked 545th in the treasure sword record. It was the sword of Liu Chan, the second emperor of Shu Han during the Three Kingdoms era. She actually has a powerful defense and can defend against a large amount of damage from a frontal attack. She's a sword maiden with a very powerful life-saving ability." Gohan noticed that there were 2 grooves in the brocade box, 1 gold and 1 silver, 4 sword maidens. 2 identical sword maidens were placed in the 2 grooves. Gohan knew that this meant that the natural sword maidens and artificial sword maidens of the Mountain Suppression Sword were stored in the sword tower and hadn't been taken away. When he first saw the Mountain Suppression Sword, Gohan's heart surged with a very strong urge to want her. This wasn't the first time Gohan had experienced this feeling. The last time he came to the sword tower, Gohan had been tortured by this kind of sword affinity. Almost all of the ancient sword maidens had sensed a sword affinity with Gohan, and it was a very strong sword affinity. Gohan could probably close his eyes and casually take out an ancient sword maiden and successfully synchronize with it. If it wasn't for Liunyinling suddenly jumping out to synchronize with the Yixian sword and bringing Gohan into the sword burial grounds, he probably wouldn't have been able to withstand this strong sword affinity and would have had to find a strong sword maiden to synchronize with. Naturally, there wouldn't have been a cute guy like Qinpin. In the end, Gohan still had to thank Liunyinling. Without Liunyinling, Gohan wouldn't have been able to obtain Qinpin. Along the way, they passed by more than 10 counters with treasured sword maidens. The female guide was trying her best to promote the advantages of these sword maidens to Gohan. She planned to make Gohan fail as soon as possible so that he would be kicked out of the sword tower. They had received news that the number of people waiting outside to synchronize with the sword maidens had already exceeded 100. They had to speed up the synchronization experiment in the sword tower, or else they would have to work overtime until 11 p.m. However, Gohan's attention wasn't on these sword maidens who were ranked in the hundreds or even the thousands. This was because Gohan's goal in coming here was very clear. He was here for the number 1 treasured sword, the Heavenly Sword. Since he had already synchronized with the sword maidens in the game, he would definitely be able to do it in reality as well. In fact, more than half of the treasured sword maidens along the way had a strong sword affinity with Gohan. Although it was much lower than the ratio of all the ancient sword maidens, it was still a very terrifying thing. This meant that more than half of the treasured sword maidens had acknowledged Gohan and had taken the initiative to invite Gohan to become their sword wielder. If half of the treasured sword maidens had acknowledged Gohan, would Heavenly Sword still be able to escape? Alright, don't waste time on these sword maidens. Just tell me where the Heavenly Sword is. Gohan interrupted the guide, who was talking non-stop about an artificial sword maiden, and asked bluntly. TSK, another kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. One look and I can tell that he's a newbie who has just reached 1,000 quarks. The guide secretly despised Gohan, then replied with a smile, Lord Gohan, you might not know this, but our swordsmiths are unable to replicate the artificial sword maidens of the Heavenly Sword. Even now, the template for the Heavenly Sword has not been analyzed. Our sword tower doesn't have any artificial sword maidens for the Heavenly Sword. What does this have to do with artificial sword maidens? Gohan frowned. I don't need artificial sword maidens. I only need natural sword maidens. Could the Heavenly Sword have already been synchronized and taken away? How could that be? Of course not. The guide covered her mouth and laughed. The Heavenly Sword hasn't been synchronized and taken out for more than 300 years. I believe that even after a few hundred years, no one will be able to take the Heavenly Sword away. The guide's words were completely ridiculing Gohan, saying that he was dreaming. It was no wonder that the guide felt this way, because the Heavenly Sword was indeed a sword maiden that was very difficult to serve. From the first time she was born until now, she had only met 2 sword bearers in real life, and it was said that her relationship with both sword bearers was terrible. The last sword wielder became a powerful immortal sword wielder in the end. After that sword bearer obtained the spirit sword maiden, he completely shelved the Heavenly Sword. He never used the Heavenly Sword even once in his life until his death. After that sword bearer, the Heavenly Sword seemed to have completely given up on humans. No matter how many people came to it to synchronize and take care of it, it did not respond at all. For more than 350 years, the Heavenly Sword had rejected over 50,000 ancient sword bearers' requests to synchronize and take care of it. Just bring me there. What's with all this nonsense? Gohan glared at the guide, and his tone became very rude. Faced with Gohan's domineering attitude, the guide began to curse in her heart, but she still maintained a smile on her face. All right, please follow me, Lord Gohan. This is your right. After following the guide for a while, Gohan finally arrived at the place where the Heavenly Sword was kept. It was a separate hall with 3 walls in front, left, and right, each with a counter. These 3 counters were probably where the Heavenly Sword, the Fishbowl Sword, and the Heaven Inquiring Sword were kept. Sure enough, Gohan glanced at the nameplates on the counters. They were the names of the 3 ancient sword maidens. However, 2 of the brocade boxes on the counters were already empty. There was nothing inside. Only the Heavenly Sword's brocade box had a sharp longsword in it. Naturally, Gohan was very familiar with the sword. After all, Gohan had already played with it in the game. Lord Gohan, as your guide, I must remind you that you must carefully consider whether or not you wish to synchronize with the heavenly sword. The guide tried to persuade him one last time. Sir Guhan, I know you are a genius, but no matter how talented you are, you will still be defeated by the heavenly sword. Let me give you some data. Based on our records over the past 300 years, in terms of bloodline, more than 5,000 descendants of the Sword Emperor aristocratic clan have been defeated by the heavenly sword. Among all the aristocratic clans, the Liunian aristocratic clan, which has the best bloodline, every generation's direct descendant would come here to try to synchronize with the heavenly sword. However, without exception, they all failed. Just over 10 days ago, the new descendant of the Liunian aristocratic clan also came here, but he also failed. In terms of talent, of the 50,000 people who have failed to synchronize with the heavenly sword, 30,000 of them have successfully become treasured sword-bearers, 10,000 have become famed sword-bearers, and 1,000 have become spiritual sword-bearers. Of these 1,000, 86 sword immortals and 5 Jiendi were born. When His Majesty Jiendi was still an ancient sword-bearer, he also came here. Of course, he also failed. Lord Gahan, do you think that your bloodline and talent can compare to that of the Liunian family and Jiendi? Lord Gahan, please do not waste the precious resources of the ancient sword inscription ceremony. You should try it with the other sword maidens. The guide finally finished her advice. Well said, but I stand by my choice. Forget it, the guide's long speech was wasted. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.